All right, hey there, YouTube. Forrest, Latter-day Skeptic, here with another special guest. It's my sister Rachel. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Forrest.
Just spend a few minutes talking as deep as you want to, or as shallow as you want to, uh, about your relationship with Mormonism.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll get into the after Mormonism stuff in a bit.
Okay. I'm the second oldest of our siblings, of 8 siblings. You being number 6. I was number 2. Grew up very traditionally Mormon. I'm sure you've already gotten into that with the other siblings too, but very happy childhood. Pretty idyllic, living out on what we called the farm. And I felt like I read Little House on the Prairie books and the Work in the Glory series and loved living in a semi-pioneer mindset, the Mormon pioneer stories. I was riveted by, I connected with them. All of that.
You had the dress up clothes, you had the
Yeah.
the house that you would go, the barn that you'd use as your house.
In the backyard that I would set up, and I was always the ma, and it was so fun. So, which I think Mormonism does so well. You live in this sort of like beautiful story. And it felt like this simple, understandable story, one where I knew I was loved. I was a child of God. You sing primary songs, church was long and boring, but, yeah, I didn't really think much of that. I started thinking obviously more about it as a teenager. Mom and dad sent us to a school that didn't have any Mormons, and I had been homeschooled from 5th through 8th grade. So I seriously was a very protected kid as far as I watched Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman every day and read my books.
I have no idea what that is.
All the time. Oh my gosh, that's such a good show. Although it was too scandalous for mom and dad, I'd sneak it. And then I entered into the world of high school. So it was like this massive shock to my system, really. And so I started thinking more about how different I was as a Mormon, but it really was kind of a source of pride to me. I didn't mind that I was different. I was kind of fine. But it seemed to me that the clean lifestyle of Mormonism, the family orientedness of it, the direction, all appealed to my sensibilities as a little pioneer child. And so I kind of was, as a young woman in Young Women's is what the group was called for girls ages 12 to 18. I remembered always thinking that the Book of Mormon was kind of weird. It was never like I was really attached to the actual truth claims of Mormonism, so much as I was very attached to the identity of being Mormon and the overall lifestyle. Although I wouldn't have characterized it that way then. It just seemed to me like this was the way to be.
Yeah.
So BYU was naturally what was in store for me, because where else would you find the Mormon husband? And so our family, I was very one-tracked. Like I was going to go to BYU. Towards the end of high school, I started playing around though in high school and really finding myself more, which also meant I was getting into trouble more, sneaking around more, had the boyfriend. That's when those first times of like, ooh, I just thought of myself kind of as a bad Mormon girl that was just kind of doing, whatever I wanted a little on the side for fun. But I was going to eventually go to BYU and still have my whole Mormon life.
That was all, from my perspective, is whatever I would have been like 12.
Yeah.
That was all transparent to me. I thought Danny was the bad one, and I thought you were good.
Yeah, no, I feel like I was kind of, yeah. All right. I was still good by like regular people standards, but in Mormonism, I was bad, like a bad girl. And so, met Tyler, who's now my husband, 15 years old in high school. We started being a thing with each other, then started pretty seriously dating. It was a constant battle with mom and dad of sneaking, hiding, running off to be with him. Everything.
So what was the battle? Or like, what was mom and dad trying to get you to do? Is it like not steady date? Is that basically the battle?
Oh, steady dating. Okay. To backtrack just a bit. So they were so strict with me. And I think it's because I was the first girl.
Yeah.
So I my first experiences with boys was like I was first talking to this one boy that was in our ward a little bit, and I was like 13 years old. We went to the bowling alley with friends, and then we kissed at the bowling alley. Dad found out that I was talking
You
to this
you
boy.
you kissed on your first experience with a boy?
No, no, not
You
first. So we were like going out
okay.
secretly.
And eventually you went
Um,
bowling and kissed.
yeah, and oh my gosh, so funny. And so it was the dumbest kiss ever too. But so that happened. Somehow Dad found out that I'd been talking to this boy. I'm not joking. He grounded me for 2 years. 2 years from church dances, which I was just about to be 14, which that's when you can go to
He
church dances
grounded you
for
for
Mormon.
2 years?
2 years.
But I mean, grounded as in no church dances for
No
2
church
years.
dances for 2
Okay.
years. I didn't have a life outside of that though. That was I was
Yeah.
13 and
Yeah,
I was
that's fair, bro.
homeschooled.
Yeah.
And so when he found this out, I remember it was such a horrible day. And I was about to be 14, and my other little Mormon friends at the time, like I was so excited. They were a year older than me, so they were already going to these church dances. I was so excited. So Dad's method at the time was come down on them so hard that they would never dare to disobey a rule
Yeah,
ever again.
and
So
you're
2 years.
foreshadowing, like that sounds like a different human than the dad I had in high
Oh,
school.
100%. Yeah, no. So that's what started that for me. Then I get to high school, and I couldn't go to any of the high school dances till I was 16, they said. So think
Because
about
but not because of the grounding, but just because of the age.
counted as a date. So you
Got it.
can't date till you're 16 in Mormonism. And I know that I don't know how it's changed like right now, but the standard was always you don't go on a date until you're 16, and it has to be group dates only starting at 16, absolutely no steady anything. By the time I enter into high school, I can't go to these dances. Like I remember I was humiliated because a boy asked me that I really wanted to ask me to a dance, and here I was homeschooled. I didn't have any friends. I was just getting started trying to know some people. This boy that I had a crush on had heard that I had a crush on him. And so he ended up asking me to go to the dance, and I knew I couldn't. So I had said through friends something to the effect of, can you kind of tell him like, yes, but I can't officially do it. We can just kind of meet up there. And he was so like, no, that's so weird. Like, I'm not asking you to dance if you can't go with me. And I remember being just humiliated by that. Like, oh my gosh. So from there on out, I just said, no, I couldn't go to any dances. And I couldn't. So I was 16. So by the time I'm 16, I'm dating Tyler behind the scenes, like full on, he's my boyfriend. So now I can go to dances, but it was with Tyler. So now I'm in trouble because they know I have this thing going
Yeah, steady
with the boy.
boyfriend.
So then it was, you can't go with him. You can't go because that's steady dating. So then it was, I would have to ask, a friend's, Tyler would have some good guy friends. So their brothers would ask me at one dance to go, and I would go with the brother, but I was really going with Tyler, and one of my good friends would go with Tyler so we could actually be together. It was amazing. That was my whole life. It was just, oh my gosh.
And I got there's a small part of me that has a little sympathy for mom and dad, like Mormon parents raising kids for the first time. Like that's kind of the rule is they're like trying to enforce the rules that
Yeah,
they are preaching and
100%.
we're told. And yet it just has such a, in my mind, like, or it's just like almost like the wrong fight to be having. It's
Yeah,
like the
and
the piggy
in
bank
mom's
idea. Like
defense,
they should withdraw from the piggy bank on things that are
are
significant. And I mean,
significant.
I guess dating when you're
But in
16,
Mormonism, everything is made to seem significant on some level. Like,
yeah.
and I just think back to Young Women's and some of the lessons. They could make anything seem quite significant, from a
Mhm.
second piercing in your ear to going to a dance to having a steady boyfriend at all. So I get it. I get that mom and dad were just trying to live according to the counsel of the church
Mhm.
always. And to mom's credit, she cared a lot about my emotional experience with this and tried her best always. She was always trying to work around it for me. I remember she got me a personal shopper at Macy's, because she wanted so badly. I had to obey all the Mormon modesty rules, which was shorts a hand above the knee, which is very, very long shorts. I couldn't have any tank tops. I couldn't show my shoulders at all. So everything I owned had to have at least a cap sleeve. So we could never find clothes for me as a teenager. I would always feel too embarrassed to go to the football games or stuff because all the girls were just wearing normal, shorts and tank tops, and I always felt like I had to wear some kind of shirt that. So mom cared
That
and
that whole
wanted
that whole pioneer thing
to.
started to bite you in the
Yeah,
butt at the end.
it was great when I was living on the prairie at our farm by myself at 12. It just became a whole other thing when I had to enter into the world.
Yeah.
So mom, I remember she did that and she spent all this money and I ended up with these lavender capris and things that, oh my gosh, the stories I could tell that your male audience isn't
But
gonna.
also capris were in, like, the early 2000s.
Well,
What are
I
you
can
talking about?
assure you what I was wearing was not that great, but mom cared. I don't think dad ever cared about my emotional experience with any of this stuff. I don't think that he understood it, to be honest. I don't think he was um I don't think he was like there was malice in it, but yeah. So I was just always having to do these workarounds, it felt like, and always in a state of tension about how what I wanted just had to be in conflict with what the standards were. And then I always felt this sense of guilt because I would see other Mormon girls who seemed to just go along with it just fine. Like they just wouldn't think to date a boy,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
And I think something
There
that
were
is
plenty of those that
s
just followed the standards and were happy to do it and obeyed. And I just had a severe obedience problem. I
I
was
think, something
better.
that's important to note, though, is you went to a different school than most of the Mormons, and so there
Yeah.
weren't Mormons around you. So,
Yes.
like, it's easy to be obedient when all of your friends groups go to seminary together, and then you go to the high school together, and you hang out together at the high school, and you're all kind of on the same page, and you're dating guys that understand your standards. But when you're at a Catholic school, like, and there's no Mormons around, they don't understand any of that. So you just
Yeah.
have a target on your chest, and you're like, yeah, have a
Which
hard
is
time fitting
the
in,
last
especially
thing
being
you
like
want
a
as a teenager is
yeah,
to feel
not
like
only a
you're the
teenager, but a
standout one.
homeschooled teenager, which now is like into high school and trying to like see what the real world is like, the real world of high school. But yeah,
Well, it's a real time of figuring out your own identity and that identity formation that happens in those years. And um, yeah, it was super hard, and I wanted so much to just not have that target on my back feeling. I remember already feeling really kind of shy and embarrassed about the fact that I was homeschooled. Like I explaining to people, oh, I'm from homeschool. And then on top of that, and I'm Mormon. I wasn't particularly ashamed of it, but it just compounded the fact that everything I ever did felt like it was so, I had to, nothing could just be simple. I couldn't just go to a dance. I couldn't just date a boy. I couldn't just wear a tank top on a 98-degree day at a football game. I couldn't just pick a prom dress. Like, oh my gosh, mom and I still, each individually need therapy for those years of just every time there'd be a dance that I could attend because I was 16 at that point, I would have this pit in my stomach about where am I going to find a dress? And how am I going to wear this sweater shawl that I have to wear over the dress long enough? Where can I take it off when mom and dad are
yeah.
around so that I can be at the dance? These things are so, they seem, and they were passed off as signs of just vanity oftentimes in the culture, that I cared about these vain things. I look at it very differently. I was like, this was just a normal developing teenage girl trying to find her place and be able to self express on any level. And it was just blocked by the dictates of the church.
I think in a couple of videos I've mentioned this general theme because I think a lot of times these issues don't really get talked about by ex-Mormons as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like these little issues, like they compound so much. There's like so much unnecessary fighting. We'll say that you and mom had over these issues that like whether the issue was like a big deal or not, strained your relationship so much, and
Mm-hmm.
most of it is probably unnecessary. Like sure, modesty standards, honestly,
Yeah.
are probably there is a discussion that almost all people are dealing with.
Yeah.
But these, like, super arbitrary lines in the sand that the church drew and mom was trying to enforce, even if maybe she didn't even personally care that much, like, it just issues like that start to stack up, and when you're talking about, like, developmental years of, like, a high schooler, it's like, that's not nothing. That was impactful on your relationship with mom and on your, like, ability to express yourself, and then like, it led to you being secretive.
Always so secretive. And What you said is it's not that big of a deal. These were simple issues, but that could be flipped onto me, which is these aren't that big of issues, Rachel. You need to just obey. Like the sooner I could get on board with being obedient as a Mormon girl, as a Mormon woman, then these problems would go away. It was all coming from me and my
Mhm.
resistance to the laws of God. It's like these are just the commandments. They keep you safe, they keep you happy. Just do it. Like, what is your problem? That's
Well,
how kind of
and
get
and
flipped.
most of these were
And I,
modesty
and I
issues. So it
internalized that.
means
I
it
do
means
think I
you
had a
wanna
problem.
be immodest. You wanna
Right.
be
Right.
scandalous.
Why is it so big? Why is it such a big deal, Rachel, that you need to show your shoulders? Why is it such a big deal? And so I internalized that more of like there was something about me that was bad, or there's something about me that just was so yeah. It was like I wished on some level I wished so much that I could be like the girls that seemed so simple about it all. Like they just didn't have a problem with it. They just were fine. I just wasn't. And I thought of that as a very bad thing about myself. It wasn't till years and years and years later, as I was kind of unraveling this, that so much of it I realized I claimed as a part of me that was like, that was good about me. Like that was a really good thing. Fast forward this clear to when I left the church officially when I was 30. And one day I I don't know why this is where it says that it is deeper than it's not just these small things. These things embed in our psyche in a way that when we're sort of released from them, it still to this day has emotional salience for me. I was I decided I was going to shop. We were done with the church, done garments, everything. I was done after this huge long process that we could talk about. And I was in a store and it was summer and I had my 4 little girls with me. I'm 30 years old, mom of 4 kids at that point. And I went into the store and I was like, I'm going to get stuff because it was hot and summer. And I was like, I'm going to get whatever I want. And I grabbed a pair of shorts that I liked. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the first time in my whole life, my entire life, I'm entering a store and I'm going to buy exactly what I want. Like I don't have to think, can I put a shirt under that? Is there a way I can hide that? I mean, I got to be careful about that. And will these cover that? It was just like, what do you like in here, Rachel? What do you want to buy? Like, what would you like to wear? It's your choice. And I was like, I'm 30 years old. I'm a mom of 4 kids. And this is the first time I've bought myself something that I would buy myself that I like. And I did. I remember I wore those shorts, and I remember I got a text within a day from a Mormon friend who saw a picture
No
of me in
way.
the shorts, no joke. And she said, "Hey, I just want to check in on you. Is everything okay?"
Oh my
Was
god.
that's the thing about the culture. We don't talk about it much, but within the circles, they all alarm bells are going off. It's clear I'm not wearing my garments if I'm in those shorts, right? It's clear if they don't see that cap sleeve line of the garment line, all that kind of stuff. So I knew going to my first play group that had been filled with Mormon friends that if I show up in this, it was like I remember feeling shaky about it. And shaking at the idea that these friends are going to see me and now there's going to be so many questions all because I have a tank top on
Yeah.
today. How
I
weird.
almost wanted to bring that up earlier too, like,
Yeah.
you were the rebellious one in high school, rebellious,
Yeah.
but and it had a lasting impact on your psyche, but there was a lot of women that were bought into it.
Yeah.
And what is that impact that they have on their psyche when they're 30 years old? And that impact is
Yeah.
now it is a problem. I see Rachel in these shorts, and I'm either judging her negatively or I'm concerned for her salvation, literally.
Or like, oh, we knew it all along. We knew it when she was 16 and
Yeah.
sneaking to prom in a
She was
regular.
never really Mormon.
She was, yeah, she always had a problem with obeying the commandments
Yeah.
and she lost the spirit of discernment. And so if you lose the spirit of discernment, then you can't tell good from evil very well anymore. And so obviously I'm kind
But
of
so what I guess what I'm almost saying though is I feel so we say this in jest a little bit and also poking fun, but I'm always torn at this idea of like when are you like a perpetrator versus the victim? And like
Mhm.
those women went through the same thing you did in high school and were, let's say, indoctrinated the same way. So like
Yeah.
the same way that you had this realization at the store that you can buy whatever you want, and you're like, "What?" First of all, like, "Why did this take till I was 30 to realize this?"
Yeah.
Those women haven't had the realization that, like, Rachel's shorts are irrelevant to anything.
Yeah. I will say in the culture I see now with Mormon women, it's more I feel like there's more acceptance of people just expressing themselves kind of how they want and not really questioning each other as much. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if sometimes that's just because I'm now sort of on the outside. There's
Mm,
always a whole different thing going on the inside than what the outside sees. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so back to high school, going through, this probably a pretty typical Mormon story for a lot of women,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the struggle of a mom trying to enforce the rules, but,
Right.
like, trying to be attractive as a woman or I guess a high school or a girl.
Yeah.
Um,
Just figuring yourself out, your budding sense of self and sexuality and all those kinds of things. Everything that is so normal, but to me it felt so salacious and so wrong and so secretive. Um, but also then on the outside too, it was just a really normal, happy girl. I mean, I did cheerleading, I was on student council, I had friends, Tyler and I were together all through high school. Like I had a really good time too in high school.
so
And
so you
then
you were dating so you were starting to get on, you started dating this guy that eventually would become your husband.
yes, yes.
You wanna pick up at that spot.
Okay. So started dating him around 16, had no intention of it becoming like as serious as it got.
Obviously not
Um,
he's not a member.
Not a member of the church. Nope. And I remembered as a joke, I used to say, I'm just going to date all the guys I can't marry right now because that'll be fun. And then in, I'll get to BYU and I'll find my actual Mormon husband, my Mormon dreamboat. So the problem was I had way too much fun with Tyler. I loved Tyler. I still love Tyler, obviously. So we became really inseparable. And then but we were smart enough to know to go to separate colleges, actually. So senior year came and it was like, we didn't want to break up. We hit the end of our senior year. It was kind of like, this isn't over, but we are going to separate schools now. So I was doing BYU. I'd gotten into BYU Provo. He went up to a school in South Dakota. And so that first year, we decided we'd stay together, but try it long distance. That lasted till like October of our freshman year. He actually broke up with me, which was the first time he'd ever broken up with me.
Brutal.
I'd broken up with him off and on throughout high school and stuff. So it felt like it was
It was
serious.
payback.
Yeah, it was devastating. So I was in Provo. I was devastated. I was depressed. I hated it. I was bored out of my mind. BYU is a good school academically, but I was not happy at all.
Was it Mormon related or was like yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yes,
Like, what was not? Because 'cause I've been to Provo, I was there for, like, EFY and then BYU Hawaii for a year, so, like, I always had a good time at BYU's, but I guess if you weren't into the Mormon gig, even I mean, when I was at BYU Hawaii, I was basically on my way out, so what was it about BYU that you didn't enjoy?
I
Besides
think
maybe that
it's
you're separated from Tyler.
yeah,
Eh
I don't think I was ever very much actually attached to Mormon theology and truth claims and that level of the church. I liked the lifestyle. And the biggest thing about the lifestyle that I liked and that resonated with me, especially even at a girl at 18, every friend I had and guy I knew was out, just completely obliterated, drinking, drugs, everything. Felt so out of control to me that I liked the safety net of just like a clean living lifestyle.
So, I'm laughing because I'm confused though, because first of all, I don't think every guy you knew was just getting obliterated.
I
Like,
don't it
I
seemed
know
like
the high school people you went to,
the
and there's
party
plenty of
scene
successful people.
as a freshman in college though were really I don't know, they were pretty
So
intense.
what you were at
Not BYU.
BYU and you were unhappy.
I know. Yeah, I was really bored, but I knew
Yeah,
that
sounds like you wanted to, like, go to parties or something.
I wanted to be around some really fun people, and for whatever reason, I just didn't find it. And it was on me too. first, when I started there, I wasn't actually intertwining into any groups or friendship things because I was trying to always be home to talk to Tyler on the
Yeah.
phone. Like, Tyler and I were trying to keep things going. And I wasn't talking to guys or boys because I was being loyal to Tyler. And so that limited so much of what I was going to actually go out and do. And I was limiting Tyler. Tyler joined a fraternity. He's on the football team. He wants to just have fun, but he's kind of like being nannied by me, I'm angry at him if he's drinking. I'm angry at him if he's doing anything that a college kid does. And so that's ultimately, I think, why he broke up with me. But at one point, I started getting serious about, you need to learn about the church, Tyler. That was the first time I ever pushed the church at all because I realized I wanted to be with him. And so that's when I was like, well, we got to figure this thing out. I was never going to not marry a Mormon. Like, that was always the plan in my head. And so I was like, well, you learn about the church. I basically introduced that. We were fighting a little bit. He broke up with me. So we ended up spending our whole freshman year apart, which was really good for both of us. And I was totally miserable. I was depressed. I was so sad. I missed him. But I started doing the Provo dating circuit. Like, I was just on date after date after date after date with guys. And didn't like any of them, but no real connection with any of them. But it was fun, that part.
So what was good about why was it good that you were at separate schools, and why was it good that you guys were separated your freshman years?
I think it was good that we just learned what life was like without each other.
Okay.
And what I think was healthiest for me was that bond and connection that I had built with Tyler. I realized I could survive and I would get over it if he wasn't going to be in my life forever. So by the end of that freshman year, I remembered thinking, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I even wrote a little letter to myself. It was like, it's such a dramatic, college girl thing to do. I wrote a letter to him that he would never see. That was just kind of like my closure, my goodbye of like, I'm okay. I'm going to.
So you weren't sending it to him. You never planned to.
No.
It was just you like expressing what you wish you could say to him.
Yeah. But it was kind of like this final goodbye. This is what I dreamed of for us. This is what I wanted. What's crazy is I had the letter and found it years later while pregnant with Lily.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I read the letter to him, and in the letter it said something
offended.
about, I had these visions of you, like, for some reason, being like a dad to our little girl.
Oh no.
So we were crying. I'm pregnant, like 9 months with Lily. We're having a girl. And I had written this letter in college saying goodbye. And that I had, for some reason, had this fantasy, this dream of him being the father to our little girl one day or something. So that's kind of wild. But it was good for me to know that, and to know that I could get over something. Because when we did eventually get back together, at the time, I knew that I wasn't doing it from a desperate place.
Yeah.
I wasn't desperate to do anything to get back together. I still, at that point, I stood my ground. And again, this is from the mindset at the time that it was like, I wasn't going to compromise on my standards about the church. So when he wanted to get back together later, this is before our second year of college, we, come back over the summer. He calls, wants to reconnect. We start reconnecting, but I kind of held it at, the differences that started this are still there. Like, I still want you to learn about the church. I can deal with you saying no. I can't deal with you not knowing what you're saying no to. Like, you've never learned anything. You've never taken the missionary discussions. You've never read the Book of Mormon.
So when you say that, you were saying I would marry you as long as you at least give an honest attempt. Is that?
In the back of my head, I remembered thinking, I don't think he will say no if he knows what the church is. But if he does say no, I might not want to get married, but I'll be glad that I can let this rest finally, of like, you just didn't know, you didn't even try. So at the time he was like, yeah, that's fair. I want to learn about the church. So he started taking the missionary discussions then. And we had our first discussion. Talk about losing your testimony fast is just listening to the presentation of Mormon beliefs out loud. Like, I just feel like my whole life was always like, I know that seems crazy. Yeah, the golden plates. Yeah, I know. But trust me, that's not what you have to really like pay attention to. Like it's really about this. It's about going to church and being a
Well,
family.
I feel like that's something that people listening to this will be interested to hear is, the idea that obviously you were committed.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like you were tiptoeing, like, you were literally,
Yeah.
like, about to not marry the guy that you've been your high school sweetheart
Mhm.
because you're so committed to this, but yet at the same time, you, like, couldn't stand to actually listen to the beliefs.
They when they present, the
Well,
first
and
vision
it
lesson and everything, you're just kind of like, this sounds. But I felt like I was trying to. In my head, I'm thinking, I know this sounds nuts, but it's not actually nuts. Like, do the thing, live as a Mormon, and you'll see that we are normal people just like
yeah, yeah.
anybody else. We just have really good lifestyles, is what it felt like to me. So
Just be a
just
Mormon and don't read the Book of Mormon, and you'll be fine.
it's kind of like just take what's good about it and ignore the rest. And I think a lot of Mormons live like that. They're
Yeah,
like,
me
just
too.
take what's good. Just ignore the polygamy thing. Ignore that part about Joseph Smith. Ignore that part about this. Ignore that. Just if you would just not pay attention and worry so much about that, just come on. There's so much good here. And that's kind of what I did. And you just feel that cognitive dissonance as you're sitting there in those first missionary discussions and going, this is wild, guys. Like, this is some of the stupidest stuff I've ever heard articulated out loud, and yet I am, and I love it, and I'm a Mormon, and here we go. So yeah, it was weird. So Tyler took the discussions. We both went back to. I went back to BYU. He went up to South Dakota. He ended up continuing the discussions up there, and meeting a Mormon on his football team that was a really sweet guy, and befriended him. And Tyler calls me up in sometime in November or December and says, I'm getting baptized. I've decided. And I truly was floored. I was like, are you serious right now? He's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I want to do it over Christmas break when we come back. And so I'm like, I am shocked, but I'm happy, obviously. Like, wow, this is huge. Like, this is happening. Oh my gosh, so happy.
It's an answer to your prayers.
Yeah. So call up mom and we're all happy and gonna get stuff going together for the baptism. Slight problem was Tyler got home and told his mom, who knew nothing about any of this. So his mom understandably totally flipped out and was like, you've got to be kidding. You're not getting baptized over Christmas. Like, you're not joining the Mormon church. What are you talking about? So he had never.
And I'm sure she didn't have she probably had a pretty stereotypical view of Mormonism.
Well,
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean,
my
she
son's
hadn't.
joining a religious cult of
Yes, she and I at the time was incredibly not compassionate, not understanding, and just thought she doesn't know what she's talking about.
which might also have been true, but
Yeah, but well, I remember at the time saying she's acting like we're a UFO
yeah.
and we're coming and we're abducting her son and we're going to take him away. But really, obviously, looking back, I'm like, how terrible that we had never communicated to you that he was even taking missionary discussions. He doesn't tell his mom he's investigating Mormonism at all. I mean, she knew I was Mormon and she's known me for years, but had never realized that this was where anything was going. And I was even kind of shocked by it because Tyler made this decision kind of. I think the missionaries just got to him as far as they do that get the commitment kind of thing. And I think Tyler just gave the commitment at that point.
And he understood roughly that, like, I get baptized, I'm able to get married to Rachel.
And I think in his mind at the time it was, I really like this Mormon family thing. Like, he loved our family and he loved the lifestyle of Mormons too.
I mean,
That
he loved
resonated.
all the stuff you were feeding him that he should love. It's like,
Yeah.
here's the good stuff about Mormonism, and you're being like an advocate for that.
Yeah.
And the
And
missionary
Tyler,
discussions, you get that. He's like, okay, I agree with Rachel. This stuff's a little weird, but that stuff's good.
yes. And I think he always saw me as different from other girls. I think he always liked the Mormon part of me because, like I said, I was the bad girl within Mormonism. But to the world outside, it was like,
He
it
was a
felt like
good
I
girl,
was a
yeah.
girl with standards. It felt like I was a girl who was just different. He always said, I kind of liked the way you dressed different. You were never, I was like, are you kidding? I was always feeling so bad about myself. So it's just funny how that works. So Tyler liked the whole, I'm on board for this, like, family first, good lifestyle, good living. I believe in God. I'm not really too caught up in the details, just like I'd asked him to be. Like, yeah, let's not worry too much about the
Yeah.
details. So he agreed with for his mom not to get baptized over Christmas break. I'm trying to remember all these details, right? So, and to postpone it. She had asked him to please postpone, and they were Catholic. So she was trying to get him to go talk to Father Chuck, good old Father Chuck at our high school,
That's funny.
Brother Philip. I remember he was a brother, not a Mormon brother, like we say brother and sister. He was a Catholic. What are the brothers? What are they? I don't know what they're formally called anymore. He was our religion teacher in high school, and I
Yeah, he
remember
was my religion
a
teacher
guy from the
too.
Bronx, and he said to her, "He's like, Lori, the Mormons are very nice people. You don't need to freak out about this."
He's
He said
he's also well, he definitely was flamboyant. He's a
he was,
flamboyant brother,
yes, he was. I
and he
love
spoke
it.
just like that.
But I remember Brother Phil was like, "That's so nice." He like
Yeah, he literally was like,
spoke
"Yeah, it's
up for.
good."
He's like, "I know these people. They're very nice. These Mormons, the Hansons, they're very nice people. Stop
Brother
freaking
Philip, you
out."
have to convince him to not join the Mormon church. He's like, "No, no, good for him."
That's kind of
Or
what he did. I
it's
think
like,
he seriously was just
Brother
so
Philip, my
bitchy
son
about
is
it.
joining the Mormon church. Oh, congratulations.
That's kind of how it went. So Tyler ended up getting baptized without me. I got accepted to BYU London. I went to London, and I kind of thought of it at the time as, well, if this is really for you, you're going to do it, whether I'm there or not. If it's not for me, that's
Yeah, and for some context for the audience, you love London more than you love your husband.
always been a close tie.
Yeah.
I always told Tyler, if I have a chance with Prince William, I need you to know this. I'm going with William. I'm getting married to Prince William. This is when he had hair. And I was like,
Yeah,
but
Prince William,
you will be my lover forever. So I was like, because the royal family's fine with that. So you
what's
will
like the
always
opposite of a
be,
mistress?
I don't know.
Like
What's that?
Tyler would be your mistress,
Yeah.
basically, but
He was basically be my royal mistress was the
it was
plan.
just for like the royalty thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I just need the title, Tyler. It's nothing else. So yeah, I did London. It was a great experience, and then got home. I wanted to go to BYU Hawaii after that because I felt like Tyler and I had a good long distance thing going. It was fine. We'd get back together over the
And
summer.
he was playing football the whole time, so he wasn't
Yeah,
leaving
he was playing
South
football
Dakota,
in
North
South
Dakota.
Dakota.
Right.
Yeah. So got home, and we had talked about, let's wait and get married the next summer, because I was going to try to go to BYU Hawaii. I had this like list. I was like, I want to do Provo, but then I'm going to do London, and then let's do Hawaii. And mom was very insistent about, like, we're not doing a long engagement. You can't do a long engagement kind of thing. I was thinking in my head, I was like, well, we're going to secretly get married so we can have sex and stop feeling guilty about it. And then we'll get married the next summer. But we'll be married. I'll just go to BYU Hawaii.
And when you say secret, did you mean secret to the family too?
Yeah, we were
Oh, okay.
straight up secret.
Well, it's like again this theme of like because of the Mormon beliefs, like you
Yeah,
have to like have this weird secret relationship.
yeah, pretty much. And so I was looking at like these little, wedding dress things that I could do for an elopement with him over the summer while I was in London. Just joking around with like, yeah, I think we're going to do it this way. And then I can have more time. But got back, Tyler proposed, and we were pretty much convinced that no, let's just do it this way. We will get married in August. So he proposed sometime in, I don't know, late May or June. And then we decided to have the wedding in August. And then since we were married officially, I was like, I would have to go up to South Dakota with him, which I wasn't going to do because they didn't have my degree. I was interior design at the time. And I was like, I can't live in Rapid City and not have anything to do at school. He went to an engineering school. Actually, it was like a small college up in South Dakota that was engineering. And that's why he loved it. He wanted to be an engineer, but he also wanted to play football. So we got to do both of those things at this school. He decided to come back. We both decided to come back to the same hometown, go to the university that had degrees for both of us there. I could do interior design, he could do engineering. So we got married that August. And then pretty much from there, it was a very standard Mormon life. We went to school. We got pregnant with Lily about a year later.
And I feel like it's important for, like, I guess this story, because he got baptized, and then you had to wait. Was it 1 or 2 years before a temple marriage?
Oh, yeah. You had to wait a year out, I think, from the baptism.
Which I might be wrong, but I think they might have changed that.
I think they might have. I loved that though, because I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, I get to have a normal wedding. I was
Exactly.
like,
So you have such this a weird, like, dichotomy of, like, so committed to Mormonism, but yet at the same time, like, so willing to be fine with not doing the Mormon.
yeah.
A
Well,
lot of
the
it
temple
cultural,
was
but
something I was definitely like, I knew that was the moment when the garments were coming. So I was like, I'm okay with this just like waiting. But especially
so
for
you don't wear
every
garments?
girl, even Mormon girls grow up dreaming of the traditional wedding. You're thinking you're going to walk down an aisle and you're going to have flower girls. Nobody really teaches Mormon girls that none of that is going to be for you if you just do the temple situation. It's not going to be anything like a standard wedding. So I was excited that I get to have a normal wedding
And so
and
I
without
can't
because there was
so
no shame
from
because
Mormon wedding until, because women don't receive their endowments until the temple,
until they're
or
married.
oh.
Men
Wait, no, married in the temple.
or if they're going to be a missionary, I believe. But
But
you
wait,
typically wouldn't go take out your endowments, which is the first time you go to the Mormon temple ceremony, until you're married, typically as a woman.
but are you saying married in the temple, or, like, so you marrying Tyler outside of the temple, did you take out your endowments before
No,
that?
you would
Okay,
go together to do that.
got it.
And so we do our endowment and our sealing at that time together. And so that was a year later, but we still didn't do it exactly at the year mark. Actually, I remember we waited because we were going to do a family thing. We all went down to San Diego together. I wanted to do it in the San Diego temple, and I was super pregnant with Lily, and so that's when we did that part.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
I'm
so, oh
just
yeah,
trying to,
I
yeah,
guess
keep
it's
up
like
with, so married to Tyler, I guess is where.
yes. So I remember first real crack of just like I am freaking out here was the temple. Um, did the whole ceremony, just thought it was like a moment when I had him, I'm sitting in on his first missionary discussion
Yeah,
going,
it's like, because you were raised Mormon, you didn't really have those, like, you didn't, your firsts were, like, as a little kid.
yeah,
So, like, this was, like, your first as an adult,
it's so true. Yeah.
without, like, what, listening to like, you heard Tyler get have the discussions, but you had already heard it, so it was a little bit less crazy, but
Yeah, exactly.
it
So
was
the
like your first
temple
time
was
hearing
just,
something. And I haven't been through the temple. I can't remember if you remember that. So
oh yeah,
for the
right.
audience and you, I don't really know. Obviously, I know a bit, but I have never experienced it.
Well, and by this point, I'm about to be a mom. I am so fully committed to having this lifestyle that I felt and living in a way that I'd always felt like I wanted to and to stop being a problem. Like finally, I'm a Mormon. I'm married to a Mormon. I'm not breaking any rules anymore. We're married.
Oh yeah,
Everything is like I'm in alignment now. I'm not like this
it was like
ancient.
literally the moment you thought you were about to be in alignment was the moment that you had an issue.
Yeah. Well, and I went into the temple fully like, I'm going to do this right. And I'm going to see all the blessings in it. And I remember I liked the initiatory process, which is kind of like the women blessing you. And I remember thinking, I feel it. I feel the spirit. This is good. Then the endowment process started. And I was just, there was a point I remember I felt dizzy. I was just kind of like feeling sick to my stomach, dizzy. This is so bizarre. And I remembered holding up my hand for the part where it's talking about obey your husband and just thinking, what? And the temple ceremony, they give you temple prep classes, which we had taken, but you're never allowed to actually speak about the temple covenants and the oaths that you're going to make outside of the temple. So nobody ever actually tells you any of the language or exactly how it's going to go because it's considered too sacred to discuss outside of the temple. So
It's like, what is a temple prep class if you can't discuss the crazy things about the temple?
yes,
I mean,
yes,
it's like I understand the dilemma that they're in. They're like, okay, we are having this issue where, like, people are getting rattled when they go to the temple for the first time. So, like, we need to have some kind of, like, slow burn process to, like, teach them about it. But at the same time, we have restrictions that tell us we can't tell them everything.
Yeah. And we were not told anything really about it. I remember leaving the temple feeling so bothered and disturbed by it, just glad that we were all going out to dinner after. And it was kind of like trying to just switch my brain out into like, let's just, oh, yay, I'm just glad that's all done. But feeling very sick about the garments, actually. I remember putting on the garments the first time. I'm super pregnant and feeling like, well, if I'm not in the middle of the biggest identity crisis of my life, like here I am, 7 months pregnant with these kind of big garments on, and this is who I am now. This is what I've covenanted to do for the rest of my life. And there it is again. I'm being a problem. I have a problem. I'm the problem. So
Garments aren't a
I'm
big
not
deal.
going to be the problem. I'm going to figure this out.
You're
So,
being a problem because you want to wear different underwear. Like this isn't the hill to die on.
but it didn't
Yeah.
feel that way. It
No,
felt
yeah,
very like this thing that every woman has been taught, that every Mormon person is taught, is the pinnacle of everything, is the temple. That this will be the moment. I've witnessed countless women cry and tell me how special this is and how meaningful it is. And here I am being a problem because I'm not seeing it.
well,
I'm not
so
feeling it. I'm disconnected. I feel freaked out of my mind. And yet I promised. I promised. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. Because first of all, that's the other crazy thing.
yeah.
You promise before you know. They give you the opportunity to leave the temple at the beginning. There's something in the ceremony that's like, and you can go now if you don't want to do this. But what's funny is they don't do that until it's at the beginning. So, and as if
They
you're
don't
going
say
to
anything
leave,
like
as if you're just
throughout the
going
whole
to
process, you're able to leave if you don't want to do this. Do they say that?
no, no, it's at the very sort of beginning. And it would be like the biggest moment of shame ever of like, no, I'm going to go now. I don't
Yeah,
even know
that'd be.
what is about to happen, but I'm going to leave now. My whole family's here. Everybody's waited for this moment. We've waited over a year
Well,
and a
there and the rest of the time if you walked out, it's like the whole process would be the biggest point of
half.
shame.
Yeah.
It's like even if they
So
gave you the option, like now that you've seen the crazy stuff, are you gonna walk out? You're like even at that point, if they gave you the option, more than likely, no,
I
you're not
still
gonna walk
wouldn't.
out. Like
I would
it's
assume I was the problem. I assumed I was the problem.
well,
And
this reminds me of the analogy or the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, I think.
yes, yes.
Like to me, that's if I'm putting myself in your shoes or anyone that's gone through the temple and was kind of rattled by it, like you just look around at all these people that you admire and respect, and you're like, you all are like, do you not see how weird this is? Or like you're even in the temple with them, you're like, mom,
Yeah. Well,
are you not seeing this?
there's those psychology experiments that have been done on people that it's like I forget which one it's called. Not the
The is it the elevator?
No, it's the
Uh,
one where they draw two lines on the board. One is obviously half the size of the other line, and they
Oh
set it
yeah.
up where they have people all in a classroom of 20 people, but there's one person that's actually the participant. Everyone else is a planted person in the experiment. And they go around the room and they say which line is longer. And every single person in the room says that the shorter line is the longer one. And then they wait to see what happens for the one person who's in there
Mhm.
that doesn't know that this is an experiment like that. So some ridiculous number, like 99% of the people just ended up agreeing with the group.
Yeah. So the
And
elevator study or analogy, or I think it was like a study, was people would walk into an elevator and the people on the elevator would be facing the back of the elevator. And they would see if like the person that walks on like turns around and faces the door like most normal people, or if they just do what everyone else does and just stares backwards. And
yeah,
yeah, people would always I don't know the exact percentage, but typically people would just do what everyone else is doing and just look at the back of the elevator.
yes, which is such a perfect example of where groupthink goes so wrong, but it is an adaptive survival strategy. It's not like we're all just supreme cowards to our core. It's that in most cases, if the entire group is doing it this way, it would
Like,
probably be the most adaptive thing for you to do what the group is doing. Except
oh,
in the
oh,
cases of just
yeah,
blatant truth, obviously, right? Like it's just clear that one line's less. And so it's a lot like that. But what we know about the people, what happens to them psychologically, the ones with the line, they knew that the other line was half the size of the other one. They assumed something was wrong with them. That's what happened. They weren't necessarily cowards. It's just that they questioned themselves more than they questioned the experiment itself and what was happening. They said something must be wrong with my eyesight. uh, I'm
And
not seeing this right.
it's
I'm
like
like,
that's not
"This
that kind of what
real."
you're saying about the survival, like the adaptive strategy. Like so many times in our lives, that's happened, and you
Yeah.
have been wrong. It's like,
Yes.
oh, this must be one of those times where I could have sworn that it was this answer, and it actually wasn't.
Right.
I looked like an idiot when I chose A when everyone else was choosing B, and you
And
know,
now just add that in, that your entire life you've been taught something. This has been modeled to you your entire life. Even think about during COVID with masks. Like every single person at one point put a mask on when they knew it wouldn't be effective, it wasn't helping, it wasn't going to make a difference. The time you get in the car and get out of the car, whatever it was,
mhm.
you did these things knowing that something was weird and like not right about it, and yet we all do those things. So it's like, take that, times it by 30,000, multiply it by this many years, and that's what it feels like to be a Mormon going through the temple for the first time. And you just assume, I'm not spiritual enough, I haven't been obedient enough to the commandments to be kind of spiritually prepped for this. So we turn it in on ourselves and we go, something's wrong with me. So I left the temple. A few days later, I called my uncle, um, uncle that at the time I respected as like, he'll kind of give it to me straight. I talked to dad a little bit about it, but dad's whole thing was, nah, it's weird. You just need to
Well,
go
that's
once.
what.
You don't really go
So
back to the temple a
yeah,
bunch.
Dad very much has your mindset of it's like, ah, forget about the weird stuff. There's all this good stuff that manifests itself in a practical way. Like
Totally.
the doctrine, not really relevant. The stories, the truth claims, the
Yes.
family is good.
And we were on the same page in that way. So when dad's, but that was the only answer he had, really, was just, it's kind of weird. You just go through it to say you did it and you're done. I'm like, that's definitely not what the church is telling me to do, Dad. They tell us to go to the temple all the time. Like, I have to
Yeah,
go all the
yeah.
time with this. So talked to an uncle. He said something sort of to the same effect. It was not a sufficient answer. So my MO throughout the next years of our marriage was really just to avoid the temple. Um, I wore the garments. I went along with all that stuff. I committed to it. But I would just, any temple, ward temple night, couples temple trips, I would just try not to go, because every time I'd go, I would just leave feeling sick and just so much dissonance. It was so uncomfortable for me. Um, and I'd try to be like, well, the temple grounds are so pretty. It is peaceful. I did feel peaceful going there. I do like how pretty it is inside the temple. I do like the quiet. I do like the
Yeah,
white.
like so and again,
I was
I haven't been
close
to it, but
to
like the celestial room, it sounds like maybe you get to meditate or something, or like it's
yeah.
quiet and peaceful and it's pretty. And that's like
At the
uh,
end of the 2-hour ceremony, you're really just ready to leave. But yes, I'd sit for 10 minutes and be happy it was
but
over.
I almost feel like maybe it leaves you on like the best note that they could leave you on
Yeah,
at that
that's
point.
true. That's
Like
true. And it would be a
at
date
least I got to be in
night.
the celestial room. Like
Yeah. And I would always have some sort of, nice insight, some recommitment. It was meditative in that sense. I liked the creation videos, some of it, really the nature scenes and stuff. Once it got to Adam and Eve and all the whole story, it got crazy. But um, yeah, so that's how I did it until here, as it goes with Mormonism, if you're pretty functional and responsible and um, you get called to callings, and you get called to more and more intense callings, to teach the youth. I was always in Young Women's, giving talks. I was asked to present for the Relief Society 50th, or no, whatever anniversary it was, super old, like 75th or 100-year anniversary of the Relief Society thing. I did the whole presentation that night. I liked the creative stuff. I could mine Mormonism for every good thing. And there were plenty of good things about Mormonism to talk about. And so I just said, I think it was uh, Uchtdorf who said something about, you just lift where you stand. And I was like, I will just lift where I stand. Whatever it is that I think is good, I will promote that. And that really became my MO for those years as a Mormon. And it worked really well. I was very integrated into wards and, friendships, and loved the people there. I still love plenty of Mormon friends. But the more you are called into all these callings, the more you brush up against these issues. So for me, at one point, the bishop called us in because he said that they wanted Tyler to be in more and more leadership roles as a young men's president or a young men's first counselor. And he said, we have to ask. It's really strange that our young men's, if we're going to have the young men's president or something, I forget what he was, first counselor, doesn't go to the temple much. Oh. Or doesn't go to the temple and hasn't been to the temple in a while. And Tyler, they were calling Tyler on for that. And I was with him though. So I said, it's me. I said, it's me. It's my issue. I kind of struggle with my testimony about the temple. I'm trying to figure it out. And so their counsel to me was, if you have any issues, sister, with the temple, you just keep going to the temple. That was the answer. And I was like, but my issue's with the temple. So where do I get the answers to my questions about the temple? We don't talk about it outside of the temple, of course. I'm like, so where am I supposed to approach somebody? In the temple? I'm supposed to go to the temple president inside the celestial room where it's quiet and start asking him my litany of questions? So it was always this dead end, but then you are also outing yourself. When you do this, to your bishop and stuff, then you're not really safe. They're worried about you. And I didn't want people worried about me. I didn't need people teaching and proselytizing to me. I got removed from a calling that I knew. They'd pulled me out of young women's. And I was like, I think
after that event?
It was after that event. And I think I taught a lesson or something at one point. I don't know if my style was too off script, but I got removed from my calling. And not like formally, like you're in trouble, but it was just like, it changed. And I knew it had changed because somebody wasn't approving of me and my style. I was asked to teach at a modesty night for the teens because a woman came up to me and said something like, Sister Hanson or Sister Hawk, we were having the hardest time with the teens, teaching them to be modest. And you are always dressed so cute and so stylish and modest. So would you please be the presenter at this night? And I remember thinking in my head, I would rather die than put teen girls through what I've been through. I would rather die. The struggle.
Do you think that they ever? I mean, honestly, both these examples. Do you think that they ever ask you to do these things because they know it's a weak point in your testimony?
No, not this time. I think they thought it was a strong point for me.
Got it.
Because I had figured out.
You were cute and modest.
Yeah, and I like to be stylish and do my thing, but I was still but at this point, I'm married and I'm shopping for myself and I'm figuring out all the ways to want to dress myself that did express me on some level. It wasn't like it was a total fraud feeling. And I don't think anyone knew anything about this whole history with the modesty thing with me. And we lived in California. Nobody knew me from back when we lived in Nevada. So to them, I just seemed like, oh, here's this mom. She's got 4 girls. She's dressing so cute. She will teach the young women how to be modest. And what's crazy is this is right nearing the end of when I was like, I got to get out of here. I said yes. I was like, well, better me than somebody else, I guess, because I think I understand this a little bit better. And I remember I presented and then listened to the other speakers and was crawling out of my skin with what they were saying. And just once again, feeling so sick to my stomach. I was feeling sick to my stomach a lot at church. That's another thing that I noticed. And by this point too, I'd started my degree in psychology. I changed from interior design and I later chose psychology. So I'm noticing for the first time just different awareness. I had a different level of awareness of myself going, why are you always so sick to your stomach during church? Why is your stomach so in knots? I was the piano. I was the pianist for primary and I would sit behind the piano and play all the songs for the little singing time. But then I'd listen to the teachers teaching the kids the lessons. And I'd just feel sick over certain things they'd say and things that I was always going behind the piano like this, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then I'm sitting in modesty night. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And it started dawning on me.
You're in the temple.
This has been my entire life. This has been my whole life. This is such a problem that everything you ever do, church is just a tormentative experience for you emotionally and psychologically. And you're always trying to make it work. At one point, I an experience happened with our brother. That was another thing that really shed a new light on everything for me. And then we went, Tyler and I one night were out. We actually went up to the pool. We lived in this kind of gated golf course thing. So there was this pool there. We did for our date night. We had the babysitter and we went swimming together. And I just started crying in the pool. And I just said, I can't do it anymore. Tyler, I can't do it. I can't go back to church. I cannot live like this anymore. And he just said, okay, okay. Like, I get it. Like, I had been talking to him all along, throughout these years. And that was it. It was like, okay, we're doing this. Like,
So,
done.
was it all of those things combined? Or was it
It was
the brother thing? Or, like, was there a specific moment that caused that, the
I
pool
would
conversation to happen?
say it was 10 years from 20 to 30 of me intensely studying because I loved history, because I loved my Mormon pioneer stories. I've been literally raised on the Work and the Glory series, which is 13 volumes of like 900-page each books that tell the entire story of Mormonism through a Mormon storytelling propaganda lens. That was just, I thought I knew everything about Mormon history because of this book series alone. I started actually reading history in my 20s. I started listening to podcasts like Mormon Stories podcast. I was like one of those first listeners. I feel like I went with John DeLynn on his entire journey all the way through his excommunication.
Yeah,
Um,
so you were listening to Mormon Stories
I
as a
started,
member, and he was a member.
yes, and he was a member. Yeah,
Yeah.
like early on, I listened to Mormon Stories, Mormon Matters. There were all these different kind of like
Who was that?
nuance.
Oh, Kate Kelly, right? Was that her
Kate
name?
Kelly hadn't been X'd yet, but yeah, I followed through that whole process, listening. I started reading. I was reading everything, like Insider's View of Mormon Origins. I picked up the oh gosh, what are some of these? It's been so long since I just was
So
voraciously reading,
so you
studying.
you were reading and studying all that while you were still active?
Yes,
Okay, wow.
yes, and trying to find I loved the third way Mormonism. I loved the middle way. I loved the big tent Mormonism. I loved the whole like there were lots of really good, nuanced, lovely thinkers in Mormonism.
Yeah, was
I
that
love
a term back then? Like,
Adam Miller. He was like the Mormon kind of philosopher. I think he's still really big in Mormonism. I was always reading that stuff. Just kind of like there's so much richness here. I'm just gonna go with this. And
you were a nuanced member. I think that's a term now that is used.
yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
nuanced member is a third way member, kind of.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, it was one of those experiences where what is wrong with me? The ones that seem so nuanced and beautiful, like the Terrell and Fiona Givens of Mormonism, so brilliant, so articulate, and seemed so at peace with Mormonism. Like just it was that same version of me wishing I could be like those other Mormon girls that were just fully, traditional believing members that seemed so at peace and so
Do
happy
do you
with it.
think some of that was like, I mean, obviously, you were putting off the persona that you were at peace. That's why they were asking you to teach it the modesty thing. Like
Yeah.
it's just that you have a public persona that's different from like your internal torments over this stuff.
Yeah.
So like now
Well,
it's
and
probably more like those people that you looked up to probably also had their own like struggles that they were dealing with.
maybe I don't know so much that it didn't feel like putting on a persona for me so much as I am going to the whole lift where I stand. I am here to contribute. I'm
Yeah,
here.
sorry. The persona not even a persona. It is just like the stuff that you like is public facing is not your whole life.
100%. Yeah.
It's not your whole
Especially
person.
not my internal intellectual life. And that's another thing is not everyone not everyone wants a really rich, deep intellectual life anyways. I don't think this just applies to Mormonism, like just in general. I do. The I like the deep dives. That's something
I
we all
also
share
think
in common as siblings.
it's not just the deep dive. I think it's some of it I think is born because you feel the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Like once you have those feelings, you have to do something about it.
Mhm.
And then and this isn't to take away from yeah, you actually also just like that stuff. Like, you
Yeah.
like learning about the history and doing deep dives, but it's also like you can't just be the person that goes to church every day and is fine, whatever. They said
You're
something,
absolutely right.
no big
You're
deal.
absolutely right. Yes, it was driven by something deeply, deeply emotional inside of me.
'Cause
because
I
it's
definitely
so
I
incongruent.
felt the same way, and I always almost, like, am confused when people are, like, not we're not feeling the same way as me. It's like, if I don't believe, I'm like, "I don't know how you could possibly stay." I actually this was a conversation I had with Mallory and, like, kind of the fight that we had back in the day. It was like, I would look at her and be like, "You don't believe? From my perspective, you don't believe, and you're fine with just doing your thing." And I don't understand how you could possibly do that because for me,
Yeah,
I couldn't possibly do it. Little did I know for her, she couldn't possibly do it either. And
yeah,
again, it was just I wasn't seeing that, and she had too much many ties to be able to be honest with me. Basically, like she was like, "I'm trying to figure it out." Is basically
yes.
what in her head what she's like, "I'm figuring it out for us, and I don't need you to be putting this pressure on me."
And
Um,
it's true. I think it's a process, and you're not ready till you're ready, and nobody can force you to be ready when you're not ready.
yeah, I agree with
People
that, but I do think that like we're
want people to
influenced by
feel ready.
others.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree. I don't believe that we don't can't share that feedback like you were with her. But I really believe it's an internal process, and at some point the switch flips, and it's I don't know that it's any one person or one thing that can necessarily make it happen when it happens. So,
So back to the pool conversation.
yeah.
Was there one thing that was the catalyst for that conversation, or
Yeah.
was it and remember
Uh,
what it was?
so I had been able to live my third way. Like, this is good. I felt like I even had community in it because thanks to kind of that whole Mormon stories community, Mormon matters, felt like the church is fine with people like us. We serve a purpose here.
Mhm.
Um, but then John DeLune got X'd. And when he got X'd, I was like, if you don't want him, and the sort of attacks I saw on him too. And I had truly felt like I had listened for years. I felt like I knew his story, and then I saw the sort of character attacks on him and everything, and every which way. That I thought, oh my gosh, like people like me are not actually wanted here. And what's so bizarre about that is I actually think we're the one thing that's really good for the church. Like, from
So
this being the weirdest fundamentalist kook crap cult ever, are the people who are allowing for some nuance. But we're getting kicked out, is what it felt like. So there was that. But the bigger one was our brother.
okay.
Um, Truthful things came out about him, his sexual orientation, his entire life story. Like, it was because you guys, like you, Forrest, and my younger siblings have always been like my children a little bit. This is such a Mormon thing to cry so openly too.
But you're not doing
Um,
the voice, so it's okay. It's genuine.
brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Um, you guys, like, because it wasn't always a peer-to-peer relationship with us. It's kind of like, as an oldest sister of such small children in such a big family, there is almost this quasi motherhood that happens where you have a protectiveness over your siblings like a parent would, almost like a mama bearness. So I've always had almost like a sense of mama bear protectiveness. But watching, I knew from the time he was little how precious and cute and perfect he was. And he was a gay kid. Like, and of course, I didn't think about it like that at that time. But witnessing his whole life growing up, and that here was ultimately this totally good little boy, just cute as can be and funny. And he went through the church system. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I don't wish that any precious little Mormon boys who are gay go through the church system, because it is an emotional, miserable mess. I think it's hard enough in the world at large, right? I think we're getting so much better about it now. Um,
Well, almost an interesting angle on it is it's hard to go through the Mormon system as a quasi rebellious girl and you fight about things like modesty, but now you're going through the church system as a gay person who has no option. You know, you have no ability to change your it's not like,
right?
"Oh, what's wrong with me? I guess I'll cover my shoulders and mom will be It's like there nothing that he could do would like
Yeah.
change anything.
Yeah. Well, in those Mormon stories, the ones that impacted me so greatly were the ones of gay members of the church. I just listened to their stories and I could feel my heart crack in ways that it was so palpable. And then so when everything finally aligned and the truth about our brother was just finally spoken out loud by him after so much torment, after so much pain and his whole own process, right? Um, I felt like the I remember he told me we finally talked openly. We were driving back from Disneyland and it was late at night and my kids were in the car back asleep. And I said something to him of, whatever it is, like, I'm totally fine with that. I'd like alluded to it. And without even saying it, he just said, I know. I just needed, I'm getting to it. I'm ready to start telling and talking about it. So it felt like that night we stayed up for a couple hours talking. And I felt like for the first time, it was like I got to be introduced to him. Like, I've known that you're there. I know there's some real you there that hasn't been allowed because it would be too shameful and dangerous or embarrassing or wrong. And it just felt it truly felt spiritual. It felt sacred. Like, this is sacred. I'm talking to my little brother for the first time and he's telling me who he is and it's okay. And I can't believe that this has been done to him, that we've expected this out of him and that he's had to live with this sort of like private shame and that he did exactly what I did. It must be me. I think we internalize it. It must be me. So, anyways,
Which is
that,
basically taught by the church. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
it still is taught by the church. It's a mind for anyone to try to be a gay Mormon, and God bless them. There are ones doing it, and I'm just like, I love and want to wrap my arms around you, and just hopefully the church is going to figure this thing out so that they stop hurting so many people. But yeah, witnessing that coming finally into just full view, and how actually sacred that felt. Like, this is what is true. This is what is right. Like, you cannot convince me. There's nothing anyone can say to me. I've never been convicted. Everything you told me I was supposed to feel the burning of the bosom about the Book of Mormon and the burning of the bosom about the first vision, and I should feel this burning warmth about this. Do you know what I feel it about? I feel it about my little brother. I know for a fact what I've witnessed his entire life from the vantage point of an older sister, quasi, probably way too overprotective and enmeshed mother to him. But it was like, no, absolutely not. This is not happening. And I'm not participating in a system that does this at all. I won't sit in the pews and smile. I won't act like it's fine. I won't sustain a leader for another day if this is what it causes. No.
Did you see the Kelly's interview on Mormon Stories? He's a submarine officer in the Navy.
When was this? Was this more like a recent one? Because I haven't watched a lot of years.
This is probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, he basically said the exact. So I think he has 2 gay sons, and he said that when they came out to him, he felt the pure love of Christ. Like, if there is such thing as the pure love of Christ, this is the moment he felt it more than any time at church.
Yes. 100%.
And obviously I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But to me, it's just that is when you're talking about these emotional experiences that are powerful. That was something that I identified as a problem with Mormonism. It's like, I have emotional experiences at EFY, and I have emotional experiences when I watch like a really good movie.
Yeah.
And when your brother comes out as gay, like, this isn't, this isn't the Holy Ghost talking to you. This is like what it means to be a human and connecting with something on a deep emotional level.
Mm-hmm. And you know this about me. I'm theistic. I feel and believe in God. And for me, it was a little. The meaning I've made out of it is a little different in that, all along when they told you to pray and pray and pray and ask if the church is true, I remember having a sense once of like, are you gonna let me tell you no? That was the voice. That was like the the intuition that came to me of like, are you gonna allow for a no? I'm like trying to answer you, but I don't know if you're gonna allow for a no. So just think about that. Like, will you allow for a no? And then I mulled on that for a long time too. Like, would I actually allow for the answer to be no? Like, no, this is not true. So that had already been in for a while, you know, because I was earnestly praying. I have always felt this sense that I have had a loving creator with me all along. That was another thing that actually caused the dissonance. With Mormonism, they teach so much about you losing the spirit based off of what you're doing, or like kind of losing your closeness to your heavenly father based off of your
And
sin.
yeah, it's like so it's just so gross. It's such an obvious way to manipulate people into like
Yeah,
controlling their behavior. Like, that the Holy Spirit that's really important and keeps you safe and keeps you doing the right thing. If you mess up, it's gonna go away. It's
totally.
like if you believe in like the story of Jesus or God, I guess you'd want to believe that that's when you need the Spirit the most, is
100%.
when you're in danger
Yeah.
or when you're messing up. Like, you'd hope that's when there's someone there to help bring you up, but instead
Yeah.
it's like you'll have this slippery slope where you'll start sinning, Spirit leaves you. Next
And
thing you know,
you
it's easier
lose
to
your
sin.
power of, yeah, you lose the revelation that will come to you. And so that had always been crystal clear in the teachings, that the further you stray, the harder it is to like know and to connect. And for me, it was like, this this has always been with me. Like, it came with me when I was a sad little Mormon girl disobeying church standards with my boyfriend, scared about, you know, whatever I had just done. It was with me. Like, it was with me. It's always been with me and has never rejected me. And I have a beautiful life in and out, like with whatever decision I was making. I did not notice, or I did not have a punishing God. And so I've always had that sense of just, there's just been this with me. And so it felt like even that experience with our brother was like, there you are. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not, I will leave this church and you are with me. And I don't need this anymore. I don't need this institution. I don't need the building. I don't need the approval. I don't need the authority. I don't need the priesthood. You are not taking God from me. God has been with me all along. And that's not in like some grandiose, like, God and I'm the new prophet or anything like that. It was just like, you can't, there's nothing you guys can do anymore. I'm doing this on my own, but I'm not actually on my own, is what it feels like to me. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if there's a whole lot here, but I'm assuming there is, um, the female aspect of being a member of a pretty male-focused religion,
Yeah.
and then also being the mother of a lot of daughters.
Yeah.
In
Um,
Like,
gosh,
did that play a role,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
or is that something that after the fact you're like, "That was" anyways, go on.
Again, it's one of those things that feels so normal until you kind of step outside of it and start going, oh my gosh. First few little cracks, I remember Lily was like 7 years old and was going to go to a little church activity or go to some little friend's party. And she came running back into the house. She had her bag with her swimsuit and everything to go. And she came back in and goes, Mom, do we have a one piece for me? And I was like, why do you need I was like, your little strawberry, whatever it was like a little 2-piece tankini thing. I was like, yeah, that's fine. And she goes, no, the girls are saying I can't wear that. I need to have a one piece. And these are 7-year-olds. And I'm going, here we go. So that wasn't what caused me to leave the church, obviously, but I remember being like, here we go. We are entering into the world of female policing of
Yeah.
each other's wardrobe all the time. So I remember too worrying. It's funny. At one point, I thought Tyler and I had a conversation when they were really little, like, oh my gosh, I'm worried. What are they going to do if they don't marry a Mormon? You know? And then as the years went on, I started getting more scared of them marrying a Mormon because I was interacting regularly with Mormon men, that were telling me how wrong my thoughts were, that were telling me that I didn't really understand, like talking to me like Sister Hawk, you need to go back to the temple. And it was like, I have read more books than you about this. I know our history more than you do about this. I just, there was things about me, and I finally was getting older to where I wasn't going to, normally it would be like, you're right. These are like righteous priesthood holder males. They're older than me. What they're saying is more correct than me. As I started to get a little bit, I don't know if it was age or what it was, that I started going, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And I think I'm correct, actually. And I might be wrong, but I'm definitely not going to go with you if I think you're wrong. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'm not lying anymore. What's funny, too, I remember a conversation with Jacob once, actually, and he was like, I was really talking about church disciplinary councils because I was pissed about this secretive nature of the church disciplinary councils. I loved the way it was described, I think, in like a Mormon Stories episode once, that church disciplinary councils feel like being raped by Care Bears because it's so loving and they just want what's best for you, and they're going to obliterate you. Like your social standing in the church, your relationships, everything is going to be so harmed by whatever their choices are. So I know that when our brother was honest, does the right thing, he's going to face church disciplinary councils. And it's all going to be conducted in secrecy behind closed doors where nobody's held accountable for what's said, what happens. And the church, they put it forth as we keep these confidential for our members, right? So I was really on one about, no, these church disciplinary councils where a woman goes and sits in front of like 3 to 6 men and has to account for things, like that's not right. And Jacob said something to the effect of, well, you know what, Rachel, you don't actually know what you're talking about. I've actually been inside these. So I think I know what I'm talking about here. And I said, you're right, Jacob. I can't go because structurally I'm not allowed the priesthood. So you have positioned this in such a way that I will never be able to know what I'm talking about. And you will always be able to tell me that you know more than me about this. Because
like that is the problem that I'm bringing up. The problem is that like this is some secret thing that I will never be able to know.
Yes. It was like, I'm a Mormon woman that will never know as much as her priesthood holder because you've blocked me from that ability. So yes, you're absolutely right. I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's the problem. So the priesthood, Kate Kelly at the time was petitioning for women to have the priesthood. At first, I had your typical Mormon woman knee jerk, like, oh my gosh, these crazy feminists. I think it was it Spencer W. Kimball who said that the downfall of the church is going to be feminists, homosexuals, and intellectuals. And I was like, now I look back and go, the downfall of the church, you got a problem. If the downfall of your church are women, gay people, and smart people. Yeah. So you've got a big problem. You shouldn't make enemies of those 3 groups. It's not going to go well. So with my girls, one time I took them, we had a tradition where we go to the women's conference, mom and sisters, we'd go in before general conference in April. We'd go to Salt Lake, we'd shop.
Yeah, I thought it was just shopping. It was this excuse to go shopping.
Yeah, we'd shop, do that, go to the women's conference. That was a tradition. So one of the things I was trying to hold on to.
You have to bracket the boring part with the fun stuff, and then it makes the whole trip. You remember it as a good experience.
True, yes. Just take me shopping. Let's eat at
You shop before, you go to conference, you shop after, and then you remember how great it was.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, too, the talks at women's conference there was always an inspiring talk or two. I mean, general conference on the whole, one time a girl on Instagram blocked me, and it was fair enough, but I couldn't help it. I don't normally leave mean, snarky comments to anybody, but there's kind of like this thing that happens at general conference where all the Mormon influencers get on and talk about, oh my gosh, it's general conference, I can't wait, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so one time the church had counseled women to like stay off of social media for a period of time. And she was saying something about general conference. And I just said, I'm just so grateful you guys are going to take a break from faking that you enjoy general conference so much. Like, she blocked me. Anyways, women's conference, I was trying to hold on to that. So, as one of the traditions, part of pulling apart Mormonism, Dan talked about this too, is really deciding what pieces of lumber you're going to keep to rebuild a new house. So I wasn't fully out yet, but I was definitely pulling back. And I remembered, oh no, actually, no, I think I was maybe, no, there was no way. I wouldn't have gone to conference. I'm misremembering the time. I was nearing the end of leaving and brought the girls, my girls, to Temple Square for the first time. And we did our little shopping thing. I just went with them by myself, took Lily in London. We shopped, did all the stuff. And then we went into Temple Square and I was showing them they had this huge chart of all the Mormon prophets, of all the prophets. And I'm just looking at this entire thing of men. And I had read a ton about Mormon polygamy and the stories of the women and loved the stories, just reading these fascinating accounts of all the wives of these prophets in like the 19th century. And I went and attended after that a Relief Society lesson where they talked about the prophets. We were doing some sort of like chronology of the early prophets, and they had next to them each of their wives, but none of the polygamist ones.
Oh, awkward.
And I was like, they erase these women from history. Like these women who gave everything up, like everything. You know, there were women, I'm like, they buried their babies along the trail in the Trek West because they believed this was true. And they would have liked to have known. They would have liked to have known that none of this was actually going to happen, that this wasn't. And I can say as much as I want, but it's so beautiful, and the church has so many good things, and it's so amazing. And look at the families it produces, and look at the beautiful temple, and look at Salt Lake City, and what a marvelous work and a wonder it's all become. But that woman who buried her baby on the plane, she would have liked to know if this was at all incorrect, because she gave her all to it, right? So these young girls that married these old men, and now they're erased from history too, which is just crazy. I'm like, we're not even talking about them in lessons nowadays because we're too embarrassed of our history here. Even though it's still practiced, You know, who was the prophet just last? He had two wives. One had passed away. He had one wife
that was living and one in heaven. Yeah.
He's sealed to more than one woman.
Yeah. And when he goes to heaven, in theory, we'll have both of them there.
Yeah. And still to this day, if a wife loses her husband and she gets remarried, she has to choose. It's like, no, she can only be sealed to one man. So if you have a husband who's passed away and then you remarry and you want to do the temple thing, you just need to pick who you're going to go to for eternity. So there's so many issues that, of course, Mormon men would call me a bitter feminist in the most polite of ways. Sweet, condescending Care Bears, as they are often online. So many priesthood holders that were concerned for me. And I had even a flashback. Sorry, I'm rambling, but at BYU once, this is actually Mitt Romney's nephew I was walking with once. He's related. He's a Romney. Oh, nice. And I thought he was such a cute guy. And Tyler and I were broken up. This is during my dating phase. So I was hanging out with him a little bit. And we were walking on campus.
I think you said you were doing the Provo circuit or something.
Yeah, it was guy after guy after guy going out to Applebee's. And then they'd ask you for a back or shoulder rub if you want a shoulder rub.
So cringy.
I just want my pot smoking boyfriend from high school. I just want normal people. I don't want this weird guy with his big muscles from 24 Hour Fitness ask me if I want a shoulder rub. No. Anyways, walking on campus with this Romney kid, and I said something to the effect of like, that's a little strange about the Book of Mormon. He stops, looks me square, and is like, God the Father and Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith in the he's giving me like this testimony of the first vision as a scolding, like looking at me like, I'm here to testify to you right now, Rachel. what you're saying is wrong. And
This
I just
this
remember being like, whoa.
this
I was
reminds me of,
It's a question. Okay.
are you aware, do you know Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating for Andrew Tate in any way, but he has this funny thing where he will like, I think it was like, basically I think he calls people bots or something like that. And like once in a while you'll trip them into speaking like a, like you'll find their programming and it'll come out. And he usually this is like usually in like the context of like woke people and stuff. But
That was
that's,
it.
you
The
found a
Mormon
Mormon bot
bot
as soon
was
as you
good.
say something, and then his programming comes out, and he has to
Yeah.
just verbatim say these lines, and you're like, "Whoa, you're not like a real thinking human being. You are a programmed bot
Yes.
that is
Well, I
here
was like,
to
are you
recite."
doing that to me right now? The thing we've been taught to do to other people,
Yeah,
you're doing that to me as if I don't know the script here. And then
yeah. Like
it was just
occasionally,
this moment.
I'll get
And of course,
comments on
he
my
was a returned
videos.
missionary. So returned missionaries to like a young girl at BYU, they're here to teach me. And I just remembered being like, that was weird. What just happened? Go ahead. I
You
interrupted
found
you.
a bot. I was just gonna say, like sometimes people in the comment sections, like Mormons, once in a while will come in and say something, and I mean, obviously, there's Mormons that actually like engage in real conversations, but sometimes people will just come and bear their testimony. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
just a bot. You're not even a real person. You're just programmed to say these things,
Mhm.
and we all know the game because we were in the game. Like you
That's
were
it.
like, if I was a random person and you said that, I'd be like, wow, that was like a really unique perspective, and I'm glad you
Yeah.
shared like your beliefs with me. I'm like, I know how this works.
Totally. Well,
You
that's
just
like when the
reciting
Relief
your,
Society president starts visiting my house all of a sudden. It's like, I've been in the ward council meetings. I know what you guys are doing right now. You're worried about me because I haven't been to church. So you're like sending people out to work on this and tell me. So yeah, it's like you know the playbook, and then the playbook's played back to you, and it was just a lot. Yeah.
so well, anything else with the Mormon stuff? We will dive into your post Mormon stuff, but I did want to, one thought that I've been having lately.
Yeah.
Um, and part of it stems from some conversations with Jacob, and I think a broader conversation in Mormonism that's happening, which is this debate between, is Mormonism a net good or a net bad, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I've realized that that's not the right conversation. The right conversation is, or the right positions that we're taking, Mormons are taking the, Mormonism is always good for you. No matter who you are, Mormonism by definition has to be good for you. Like, there's no option for it to be like, "Oh, Rachel, actually, for you, you shouldn't be a Mormon." It's not a good fit
Okay.
because your salvation depends on being Mormon. So, like, their belief has to be that it's a net good for all people.
Yes. If you
And
truly believe it, that makes sense.
our belief, or like my belief as an atheist, I'll say, is that it's not good for some people. I don't need to prove that it's a net good or a net bad. I don't care the net. I care about, for this person, I let's say gay people, that's like the easiest example. For
Yeah.
gay people, I think it's a bad thing. Or for this specific gay person, I think it's a bad thing. And I'm
Yeah.
able to do that because I'm not a Mormon. So
Well,
the
and
conversation really
I don't
is,
have a totalitarian way of thinking about life, like that there is one prescriptive set of everything. It
well,
all
yeah, exactly. But Mormon theology is a totalitarian, all encompassing.
yeah.
So this
Yes.
conversation, I feel like it's been unfair. We're trying to like argue, is it, the scales will tip one way or the other.
Right.
And I'm like, you can point out a ton of people that have great lives through Mormonism, and that's great. And I'll just
Yeah.
agree with you. But I'm going to point out the few people that may have bad experiences, and you have to argue that they should still be Mormon.
Yeah.
And so that's the conversation I want to have. I don't care about this like net good, net bad.
Yeah. Well, and one allows for complexity and the other one doesn't. And so, yes, I can, I mean, part of the work of my life and the process I've been on for years is pulling apart and learning to tolerate that, like that bandwidth, right? That I have to be able to also tolerate the truth of how Mormonism made me for the good too. Like Mormonism absolutely shaped me in ways that I may not even fully always understand. And I don't have to divorce every part of it away from me. I don't have to be like, this was all a terrible thing. So yeah, I don't know that I would weigh in necessarily on the net good, net bad thing, other than to say, I think I go back to, wow, there really was something in those 10 commandments, those ancient 10 commandments that came through that first, not to use the Lord's name in vain, not to use God's name in vain. To me, growing up as a Mormon kid, we always knew, oh, that means you don't say, oh my God, oh my God out loud. You don't say that. And you're a good little Mormon kid when you're on the playground and you hear someone say it, you say, don't use the Lord's name in vain. That's what it meant to using the Lord's name in vain. To me, it's you never speak for God unless you're speaking for God. And as far as I know, none of us actually speak for God. God can speak for God's self. And so that is harmful.
Like yeah, I like that.
When you do that, that is harmful when you speak in the name of God or you speak for God.
Oh, and I've had a couple, so it's super frustrating. I've had a lot of discussions and I've made some videos on it seems more and more the Mormons are backing off of the follow the prophet mantra or like, oh, it's never, but I have multiple clips of prophets and also on the Mormon or the LDS.org website, the church says that they are a mouthpiece for God.
100%.
It's like
Yeah.
that, and if you believe what you believe, which is basically that is using the Lord's name in vain.
Absolutely.
You're saying you're speaking for God.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying you're breaking commandment numero uno.
Yeah.
Like you can't, and the harm that comes from people repping for God, that was a huge one for me too. God doesn't need reps. Guess what, everybody? God is God. He doesn't need you to go repping for him. And even in Christian theology, Mormon theology, going to what Jesus taught and speaks about, his greatest commandment is to love each other as we love ourselves, to love God and to love each other as we love ourselves. So it's kind of like the best rep you could be for God should just show up in your love for others. That's it. You speaking for God with the authority of God, that's where the priesthood stuff comes in for me. It's like you acting like God gave you the keys to be God on earth is using the Lord's name in vain. It's other gods before God too. It's idolatry. That's another commandment of, right? That you shall have no other gods before me. Well, when the prophet is this deity on earth that everybody has to go through, when the temple is my mediator to be able to enter the kingdom, when the priesthood, my priesthood leader gets to tell me whether or not I'm the keys to the kingdom are accessible for me, those are all things that are before God. So no.
Like I had an interesting debate in the YouTube comment section of it's called Saints Unscripted. I don't know if you've seen the channel. It's kind of a younger Mormon channel. And they had this video where they had, I believe she was a member of the FLDS that had converted to Mormonism, and she was telling her story. And she was going to get baptized, but she couldn't get baptized until she had an interview. I think it was with the general authority, because she was coming from the FLDS. It was like she couldn't just go through the normal process. They needed to interview her. And so they interviewed her and asked her some questions. And I just thought, I was like, that is so bizarre that she has to pass an interview to be able to commit herself to this covenant. You know what I mean?
The church that ultimately sold out. Oh, that's a whole other fascinating thing. Like, I actually have more respect sometimes for the FLDS because I'm like, you guys.
Yeah.
Back when the U.S. government was coming in, right, and going to shut down polygamy, it was going to shut down the church.
They said, this is God ways. I don't care about your ways. And they took off versus,
well, also,
wait a minute, Revelation.
The prophet at the time of the church that still is the LDS church gave counsel to his counselors to continue to keep the principle alive. Told them, you go off, you do this. You're supposed to be doing this. Don't ever let this die because this is the true principle. Polygamy was the actual true pinnacle of Mormon theology. And it makes way more coherent sense, actually, of the entire bit of Mormon theology.
Versus this, now Mormons are dealing with the gymnastics of, it was just for a period of time that happened to coincide with government getting involved and trying to shut it down. And so God's practical sometimes.
We will probably do it in the eternities, but not here right now. But we don't have to think about that. Don't think about that. Don't get upset about it right now, girls. So yeah, I actually have respect for the FLDS, and those are the real ones. They're still like around doing their thing. That's actually what Mormonism is. And whatever variation we're on of it right now, the church just constantly modifies and adapts enough to survive, as all institutions of power do. They will do whatever it takes to survive. They will We'll forget about that whole like racist blacks in the priesthood thing. Oopsie. We'll forget about someday it might be for gay members of the church to be able to go to the temple. We'll kind of reformulate that. And thanks to continuing revelation, right? Continuing revelation, they
Yeah,
can.
and that's what is one of the best adaptive mechanisms for Mormonism that some other faiths don't have the luxury of, but they've gone a different route, which is just loosen up all the rules and all the, don't have so many black and white stances. That's how other religions have adapted, where Mormonism just has the ability to change a black and white rule to a different rule that is more current with the times.
Yeah, it is brilliant. Just get a new revelation that kind
Yeah.
of undoes the other ones. And the
Yeah,
problem,
it's just one of those things that as time goes on, it gets harder and harder to make a coherent story.
well, the entire story of Mormonism isn't coherent at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what's so wild about reading the history. It's fascinating. It's so fun. Even if you're not Mormon, it's worth reading Mormon history
I'm
because
assuming
it's just a wild story.
because you're not a YouTuber or on YouTube, you don't know anything about Johnny Harris?
No.
So I think he has 16 million subscribers. It might have been in the 20s actually, but he's he's a journalist more so. But about a year ago, he made a video saying that, and I didn't know this. I followed him, and then he makes a video saying, "Hey, I'm an ex-Mormon. Here's my Mormon history." And then just like a week ago, maybe he released a video that was like the real story of the Mormon Church. And even though he's ex-Mormon and basically anti-Mormon, I guess you'd say, like pretty subtly, he told an awesome story about like the history of the church and gave a great job of like, this is epic no matter which way you look at it. Like
Yeah, it is.
this is like a really significant piece of history, like
Yes.
objectively without any kind of slant
Yes.
on it.
I agree.
So yeah,
It's
a lot of people, and
so
I've seen
fascinating. Yeah.
Mormon
And in a
people that
weird
are
way,
looking.
I like have this sick love of it. Like it's so wild.
Yeah, you should watch his video. I feel like that's almost how he
Okay,
describes
well,
it. It's like this.
yeah.
He's like, I still have this thing inside of me that just loves it.
Yeah, that
Um,
I resonate with that. But because I do. I think the Mormon pioneer spirit that like even as a little girl of just all in renegade, like we do what we think is right.
but what about
And
just the pioneer
they
spirit
thought it was
broadly?
right. They thought it was right. So that idea that you have got to throw all in on what you believe is right,
Yeah, yeah.
that's still to this day, I think, alive even in me and you. It's like I see that as like, I
Our
think,
heritage kind of is
yeah,
like,
those Mormon pioneer women that I used to envision as a little girl, it's like I think they'd like me. I think I'd like them still to this day.
yeah, they
Um,
were they were willing to, yeah, sacrifice it all for what they
yeah,
believed, I guess, kind of.
yeah,
So I want to move past Mormonism a little bit. We're kind of getting short on time, but
okay,
I think in terms of the family dynamics, you're unique in that as of now, you're like the only non-Mormon that I know of that is still religious. So can you walk through your beliefs, and then we'll have a little back and forth on some of our tension that
yeah,
exists because of it,
yeah.
in our discussions.
Well, I
Yeah.
think we always get caught up on definitions and words too, because when you call me religious, we've had this conversation a few times of I think we're all religious
So
in our mind.
I need to like tell
Um,
the audience. When I was texting Rachel earlier, and I said, "Yeah, we're gonna have a conversation kind of about your like Christian beliefs," and she's like, "I don't like labels." So it's like no matter what I say, I can't identify it correctly. So I'm gonna let her explain for herself her beliefs, and then we'll play off of that.
yeah, because I mean, it's not that I don't. Yeah, it's just like labels. I believe in the insufficiency of words first. Like I actually think that the sum total, the real understanding of all of this is beyond human comprehension. I believe and even if it's within some level of human comprehension, I don't know that we actually have adequate language to describe what's going on here. And so it's kind of like, how can anyone anyone pretend to actually know what the hell is going on here. I could read. Have I read every single book that's ever been written?
But so
Have I
to me, that
studied
all sounds like the atheist position.
Well, I feel like I have more of a position on it all meaning something. Where I feel
What
like the atheist position is it doesn't mean anything.
So this is where I
You
will
kind of
just
go
use
back
your own
and look.
words. How could you possibly pretend that you know anything about if this means something?
Because I think you have to make a position one way or the other,
Yeah, okay. So
right?
this is the
It
Jordan
either
Peterson.
means something or it doesn't mean anything. There's no in between actually there. So that is a choice. And I think it's a choice, but it's also an instinctive one. I don't know that I wonder this too about belief, like our ability to believe certain things versus not. How much of a choice do we actually have in that sometimes
Oh,
versus it being almost like an
beautiful.
orientation?
Yeah, so
Like,
I'm glad you brought this up.
right?
So I've said it in my channel multiple times. I definitely don't believe that belief is a choice. And I brought it up in the context of Jordan Peterson, who often talks about
I
belief
agree with you. Yeah.
being a choice. And I actually just had a painful listen of Peter Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens' brother. He just
Yes.
had some hour-long interview, and I listened to it, and he was saying some really stupid stuff. But one of the things he was saying, in my opinion, he admitted to being an atheist. He just said that he he basically said he thinks belief is a choice, and he chooses the the worldview that he wants to have, that he wants to be true, and that's the one that he believes in.
Yeah. See, I don't. Okay. So in
And he
that
says
choice,
out of necessity. It's like in order for our world to be good and exist, and we have these values that ground us and keep us unified as people and
yeah.
on like a moral track, we have to have these beliefs. So
Yeah.
therefore I believe them.
So I don't know that I agree with him on that. But I do think that there are these two, like if you look at those two basic sort of propositions, it doesn't mean anything. It means something. That we can't just like intellectually choose. Like I'm gonna choose this one because it seems nicer. I
I
do
always give this
have
analogy.
an orientation to
For
it.
for for 30 seconds, can you believe in a unicorn?
No, I don't.
Like, yeah, I'm just saying like right now
Right.
for fun, we're
Right.
gonna choose it and then we'll turn it off.
And I like as
It's
much
like,
as I would like to, like if you say, but if you believe in a unicorn, you'll have a happier life and it'll be fun and you'll go to unicorn parties and stuff like
yeah,
that. And if you don't believe in them, that won't happen. And so you're like, okay, then I'll believe in unicorns, but you don't really believe in the unicorn, right?
exactly.
So I do believe we have like an actual orientation to it. And I'm saying that my orientation has always been of it means something, like it means something. It means
Okay.
something. It means something. My experience has also always led me to feel it means something. This means something. So for me to move into the camp of it doesn't mean anything, it feels fundamentally, it would be as incongruent as how I was as the Mormon trying to make it all work. So I get that for some sort of like intellectual credit with atheists if I would just kind of switch and say that, but that would be fundamentally lying to me. And what I'm not doing anymore, what Mormonism, if anything, has taught me, is that I'm not lying to myself anymore. Like, I may be wrong, but I'm not lying, is an important one for me. And so I believe it means something. I've always had a sense that
What about, could you say you believe that you have the feeling that it means something?
I believe that, yeah,
Basically, like, you don't know
sure.
the disconnect is that you don't know if your feelings are actually a representation of reality.
Of course.
So all you're talking about is the way you're describing your feelings. You're not describing reality. So you're telling me that
I'm not sure.
you have a feeling that says that something exists. That is true no matter what.
Sure.
But the question, I guess, would be, do you have any belief that that feeling reflects what actually exists?
Yes.
As in, yes, you have, like, you
Yeah.
think
I think
you
the feeling
believe.
reflects what is. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I do. And I could say I just have this really intense feeling and sense of knowing that probably isn't reflective of reality. I could say that, but it doesn't feel right. So, and I'm okay with that experiential part of life. Like
Yeah, and that's where, like, with Jacob too, like, we would just get into an epistemology discussion. I would say that type of understanding of reality, it like basically you're to me you're saying you're using your feelings to prove something about reality. And I'm going to say that is not a good foundation for your epistemology because we know feelings are not in
I agree.
congruence
I
with
wouldn't
reality.
say that just going off of feelings, but when you're trying to sum up the meaning or non-meaning of reality, you are out of your scope of competence, basically. That's my that is what is logically true. So you are not in a position to summarize reality. And if we do not begin from that place of intellectual humility, because it is accurate, that is just an accurate statement, then you're always starting from some place that I think is too grandiose, that you're just guessing as much as anyone else
So,
and using whatever evidence that you're filtering through with your mental filtering and your limited capacities just as much as anyone else to build your case with your
okay.
limited scope of evidence to make your case in
But
your
again, this is
constrained.
where to me I'm like you're arguing my position. I would like to hear how your belief in Jesus will say. Like we haven't really got into that, but like what do you think about Jesus? What is your religious belief? And then how do you square what you just said with any kind of statement about the about that theism that or
Okay.
Christianity, but
So
you
wait,
say
which question should I answer? What
so
is
answer number 1 is what is your belief about the Bible broadly, about Jesus? Do you go to church? And then answer 2, how is that possible when you just made the claim that we don't know anything, and so it's basically crazy for anyone to say that they know anything about any of that stuff?
Okay. First, I think that as far as the Bible and Jesus, I believe that the Bible is a compilation of many things, right? Um, History, poetry, uh, wisdom, inspired text. I don't believe in its inerrancy at all. I'm not in that camp. Um, I do think it's a treasure. It's a human, beautiful treasure talking about the divine, talking about human understanding of the divine.
But I
Uh,
mean, treasure more like, obviously, you believe give me some, uh, English treasure that you would love to have your hands on, like, something superficial.
um, Something that would be fun.
A store ambulance.
Anne Boleyn's Book of Prayer.
Okay, so Anne Boleyn's Book of Prayer. Do you believe that the Bible is different than that in, like, a fundamental sense?
It will,
Or
of
or are you
course,
saying it's a treasure just as in the same thing?
well, it's a treasure. It's like this. Imagine finding a compilation of just like so many journals that combined everything from ancient laws, uh, narrations of travels, um, insights, poetry, song.
Do you believe that is it inspired in any way? Or again, I'm, like, being a little bit soft or slow because like, I just know I'm always stepping on landmines when we have these conversations. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand, but when I'm asking the questions, I know I'm inherently starting to limit what you're trying
Yeah.
to say.
I think when you say inspired, do I think that God like directed it? Like, here, you write this. Here, Moses, you write the book of
How about
Exodus.
any way that God influenced it?
I think that God influences everything. So the best way that I could describe it is, does J.K. Rowling exist in Lord of the Rings? No, like there's no story about J.K. Rowling in Lord of the Rings. Is J.K. Rowling all over in Lord of the Rings though? Yes, he's the author of Lord of the Rings, right? So
No,
J.K.
no, no.
Rowling has
J.K. Rowling
influenced
is the author of
everything.
Harry
Well,
Potter.
J.K. Rowling. I meant George Tolkien. I didn't mean J.K. Rowling.
That was funny. I was so good. I'm like,
Totally.
no, I
Okay,
still am
no,
not following
okay,
this.
same applies though. You could say the same with Harry Potter,
Harry
right?
Potter, though.
J.K.
Got it.
Rowling is nowhere in the Harry Potter books, right? But J.K. Rowling is everywhere in the Harry Potter.
But because they
So
authored it.
how do you
So,
say
so did God author the Bible?
God authored humanity? God is everywhere. So God is inspired in the Bible. God is inspiring
Harry
in
Potter.
Harry Potter. Yeah,
So
that God
so
on some
that's kind
level
of the distinction I'm trying to
moved
draw.
through
Is there a
everything.
distinction? Is
Huh?
there a distinction other than just how long it's been around or how historical it's been and how big of a compilation it is?
I think all of those things are part of the distinction.
No, no, but yeah, I'm saying besides it, like, it's almost like it's a
Not
difference
besides, I
in
mean, that's part of the distinction that, that it is, and it's specifically a story about the Christian conception of God. That's a distinction worth making. Like Harry Potter is about Harry Potter and Wizards, and the Bible is about uh, thousands of years of people's understanding of a monotheistic God that works in a specific way with his people.
so I'm kind of just making stuff up here. So if we had dug up another book that's about a different religion's God that is older and has more narratives, would that be would that supersede the I mean, it would add
I
to,
would
but would
I
it
would see it
supersede?
as a treasure. I would say,
Okay,
"Wow,
okay.
what a
All right.
treasure. What does it have to say? What does it
Right.
have to teach? Is there anything that's relevant? What
I'm mostly just trying to get
how
at,
are
like,
we acting
is
on
there
it?"
something specifically unique about the Bible that makes it separate from any other book, even future one or, like, something we dig
Yes.
up that's more profound? Like, "No, but this is the book that our God actually wrote," or, "This is the book that
Yeah,
our
so
God actually gave us
I
as a
don't say
tool."
that this is the book that our God actually wrote, like literally wrote. I know that some Christians or many Christians see it literally like
What
that.
about,
They
like, the
believe that
like a Book of
Moses,
Mormon
actual
translation type of
Moses sat down and wrote these these
okay,
specific
okay.
books. I don't see it like that. No. And I also see, in the same way that people use the Bible all the time, what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say? Go to the Bible. What does the Bible say? The Bible is the word of God. I often see that as a form of idolatry too. That you are using the Bible. You shall not have no other gods before me. I think the Bible is included in that. That when you are so Bible, the inerrancy of the Bible, this is the word of God, everything from it. I think we have a more direct relationship than that. I don't think God is encapsulated in one book. Like it's that again, it's not accurate. It couldn't
And
be.
it's so I've had a lot of conversations with Jacob in particular about the big divide in the Mormon church, which is kind of like how important are prophets versus our own relationship with God. And Jacob will rightly say, like, if you go down the personal revelation route, you're just going to become a Protestant. Like, our church is just going to lose all of its structure, and you're just going to have people, and it's basically what you're arguing for. Like, why would
Yeah,
you have to tie to this book if you believe in this God that can literally talk to you? And that's like what
exactly.
Mormons are going through right now. Like, we from day one of teaching the discussions, like Moroni's promise is literally saying, "Hey, God can talk to you in particular."
Yeah.
And then you have that belief, and then all of a sudden you join a religion that then has to screen all those conversations through a book or a prophet or
Yeah.
the priesthood authority.
Right.
So yeah, I think a lot
Because
of Mormons are
then
getting smart on this
who
exact
who
idea.
will
Like,
put
what's
God
the point?
who because then what will we do? Then we'll have nothing before God. We'll only have God. We won't have it's just it's like the power of man will be removed. The power of the
Yeah,
institution
yeah.
will be
Yeah.
removed. Why would
And,
you do
like,
that?
I keep coming back to the FLDS, the woman that was FLDS, and it's like the missionaries probably told her, "God will tell you if this book is true." And then God tells her the book is true, and then it's like, "Well, God is telling me that I need to get baptized now." It's like, "No, no, 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 no. That's probably just your feelings. We need to go check with the general authorities to make sure that you can actually get baptized."
Well, and that is the game. That is constantly what you're up against all the time. Is like, um, when is my revelation okay? Well, it's okay so long as it's in line with the dictates of these guys' revelation. And then if it's not real revelation. That's always how it comes down.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when it's up against you and the priesthood holder on what God said, it's like they will pay lip service to that idea. That of course we believe in your own personal revelation. Okay. Until what? Until then when I tell you this and then you take away my temple recommend, I tell you this and then I can no longer have access to my own,
Yeah, yeah.
saving rights because I
Like,
don't agree
we've
with
had long conversations about, like, this is and honestly, even from the outside perspective, it's a fun dilemma for the organization because, like, yeah, I mean, there is some value in having, like, a leadership structure. But if
it.
that
Absolutely.
leader has like, if you've already sold this bag of goods, which is you can talk to God, it's like
Yeah.
you kinda
But
you're
that's what
diminishing your own authority.
non-denominational Christianity, right? Just Protestants, they do that. That's not because they don't tell you that your pastor is the mouthpiece of God.
Yeah, but a Mormon would say, and I'm curious what you would say, like the the Mormon community is different and probably superior to a lot of non-denominational communities in terms of like the service it provides and the scope and robustness of the community.
I
Like
actually
you might find a good church.
that's something that Mormonism always taught me, and was one of the wildest things that I discovered in the first year after leaving was how many churches do a million times better jobs than Mormons. I
Yeah,
thought it was
my
the
argument would probably just
best
be on an
functioning church
average.
ever. I thought I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
you just can't get better than the way the Mormons are doing it. Oh my gosh, yes, you can. Every church camp that's run that's not EFY, every church service with a pastor that's actually been somewhat educated on what they're about to preach about is better than your standard, church member up there pontificating on whatever subject the bishop has announced they should give a talk on. Like, it's 10 times better and more
Interesting.
functioning
Yeah.
and
Wow.
better run and uh, better systems in place, and the entire just structure of how other churches do it is actually, in my mind, so superior to the way that it's almost painful to go back to Mormon services sometimes.
So what about this? Again, this is my last comment on this, being the devil's advocate, and it's you may have a good community in your church as a non-denominational Christian, but it doesn't translate to other churches in other places because inherently they are non-denominational. So like your priest isn't connected to in a hierarchy that then you go to Utah and go to a church that guy and that community is also your community.
Yeah.
Kind
Well,
of how Mormonism does.
that's what they would say, actually, that's the strength, because
Okay.
the church, one of the things I realized was so different when Mormonism refers to the church, they're talking about the church is the Mormon church, right? And it's this one thing. And when stepping out more into what I've seen and more, and I don't pretend at all to speak. I don't even know if I'm not speaking for non-denominational Christianity, and I don't even know what all these different things mean necessarily. But I have always heard the explanation that the church is anywhere. It's just any community of believers is the church. So there is no such thing as a disconnect between churches. It's just we are all the church. Like anyone who believes wherever you're at, whether you're in a building, out of a building, whether you go to this church or to that church, the church is just the group of the community of believers in humanity that you can reference as the church. Now, I know that that's not used in lingo that way. People will say, what church do you go to? Or what church do you attend? And they're meaning an actual building. But as far as what the church means in that theological sense, it's just the
The
congregation,
body of people that are
body
coming
of
together to
believers.
worship. Like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
so do you go to church and can you explain maybe just a few like superficial differences that you enjoy or maybe something you miss about Mormon service or anything like that?
yeah. We do attend church, and sporadically, not as we're not really militant about it needs to be every Sunday. But one of the things I kept from Mormonism was that sort of, boundary around Sunday, like that something is different about Sunday and should be, that it's a day of rest, it's a day of reflection, it's a day of worship. So for our family, the way we've kind of translated it is that we do family day, we go to church some Sundays, we go on hikes, we call it nature church. We just go get out in the beautiful creation, talk about how beautiful it is, talk about whatever. And so we definitely participate. I view attending church as participation in community, and participation in community specifically with the purpose of praise and and thanks for our life. So the thing I love the most about stepping out of Mormonism and into kind of like standard non-denominational Christianity, their worship music is killer. It's so good. I'm like stiff as a board, like as a Mormon coming from our very like reverent church. And I don't know why we always assumed that the only way God wants to hear us worship is through hymns from the 19th century with an organ, and that everything else is a little too
I do
stifled.
think I think they're working on a new hymnal.
Are they? Well, you'd always get, like, some of the edgier, like, I remember I tried to listen to,
Were you
the
ever the
Saber
War Pianist?
Saber Rattlers, or who was some of the other, there's some, like, Provo-y cool Mormon bands that do some good stuff, but, I mean, Christian worship music is a full immersion, uh, sensory, emotional experience that produces some level of catharsis. Whether you're a believer or not, it's a really cool thing to go experience live.
Well,
And
what's funny, and I feel like it's telling about the Mormon church is we went to Catholic high school, and even the Catholics who are still pretty proper, I thought their music was like, I'm like, wow, this is fun. Yeah. Like compared to our and I know
yeah.
non-denominational is even more, I don't know, free or, you know,
Oh my gosh,
passionate.
it never dawned on me that it was like, I'm not there. I'm not the person that's ever like this at a worship service, but I'm not gonna lie, I've felt the urge to be like, just wanna throw up my hands. It's so good, like good to be alive, good to be here. But I'm still, the best I do is I'm just a slayer. Like I just love to listen and slay. Where when we first went, it was just very stiff, like wow. And they looked like, to me, some people look crazy to me. I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, some people are just sort of more charismatic in that way. I'm more comfortable though witnessing it now and even just appreciating that it's a beautiful thing that music can move on your body in that way and make you feel so alive and good in the same way that you would get at a rock concert, right? Or at some really good band, only they're not singing about sex and drugs and
Sounds boring.
making women's butts. It's singing about God. It's singing about the beauty of life and redemption and starting fresh and that it's never too late and just so many uplifting, hopeful lyrics that I will go for that experience alone. We went to an awesome church in California that just it was the worship music was so good. And we often went because we loved the worship music that much, and I was okay with that.
So what about, I guess, like wisdom or the sermons themselves?
So good.
And again, contrasting to Mormonism, and I'm not trying to bait for an answer of, oh, it's way better than Mormonism because I'm not saying Mormon. It's totally different, obviously, when you have like a congregation led service like
Yeah.
in Mormonism.
My experience has been I describe myself as nomadic. Like when churches or people ask me, they see our family attending, we're hanging out, and they say, "Oh, do you go here?" And it's kind of like we're kind of just nomadic in that sense. I'm
We're here for
so
now.
averse. I'm so averse to membership in that sense because Mormon membership meant something. So all you talk about is, are they a member? Are they a member? Are they a member or a non-member? Are they inactive? Are they active? Inactive? All these labels on it. Um, that I have like this, like, don't think I like am a member here. I'm not, because when I need to go because something is so wrong, I don't want to have to kill my membership, even though they don't even have membership in that sense. Um, what was it? Oh, my
Wisdom,
experience
yeah.
though has been dependent on the pastor, dependent on the sermon, like overall really great messages. Really, really good, helpful, practical, insightful, inspirational stuff. And I would say there's always like, a little bit of it that I'm going, I don't agree with that. But here's what's cool about um, it doesn't matter if I don't agree with it. There's nothing on the line. My membership isn't going to be revoked. I'm not going to be told I can't take the sacrament. I'm not going to be asked to, or I'm not going to be told I can't be in the eternities with my family if I don't think about it the way the pastor just said it. If I don't interpret the Bible the way they're telling me I have to interpret it. It's kind of like there's no actual structural authority over me to tell me that I'm in trouble for something. It's just my experience has been it's you're welcome here. Like just come on in, you're welcome here. We're going to say things, you might not agree with them, and okay, that's it.
Yeah.
And to me that's the human experience. We hear things all the time we don't agree with, and as long as you're not claiming authority over me with it, as long as you're not structurally trying to do something that lays claim on my life in this way, then you can say whatever you want and I'll take what works and I will reject what I don't think is true.
And I mean, hearing all of this, it sounds honestly like a very appealing route for an ex-Mormon to go down,
Yeah.
but not a lot of ex-Mormons go down this route. Do you have any
Mhm.
thoughts on why ex-Mormons tend to go to the atheist route versus go to like a non-denominational Christian route?
Yes. My thought is that the the betrayal trauma of Mormonism is is just that. It is
It's
when
why
it,
you're still like tiptoeing, kind of like you're like afraid of the membership stuff. It's
it's
like
kind of like,
it's
yeah,
still
if you've been in some sort of your whole life, let's say you've ever known, this sounds very extreme, but like say you've only ever known abuse in your life. People who've only known abuse have a really hard time forming healthy relationships sometimes because they don't have a template for it of like what does healthy relationship even look like? What's a healthy love? So sometimes you'll see a repeat of this pattern out in a person's life because there's a fundamental distrust forever of humans. Like nobody is safe, nothing is safe. I think sometimes that's at play, possibly. I also think that orientation thing matters. You just might not think it means anything, and that's really what you feel, and that's really what just it is where you are. And so if that's where you are, and all of this just makes you bristle and feel that same sickness in your stomach of incongruence that I felt in Mormonism, that might just be it too. And that's why they do that. But I definitely think that it's such a betrayal that we experience when we grow up and confront that what we were taught was not true. Like so many specific things, not just sort of like faithy, we don't really know, things that we absolutely know were wrong or incorrect were taught to us as truth over and over and
and
over.
it brings me to, or it reminds me of the pioneer analogy. It's like it's not just that they were untrue, it's that you changed your life and did a bunch of things. Like those women lost their children on the trek. Like
Yeah.
that's where not only is this like in principle this hurts me, but like no, I literally have dedicated so much of my life to this
This
that
cost me so
this
much.
cost
Yeah.
me so much. I mean, again, with the caveat of it also gives you a lot.
Yeah.
So I never like
Hard.
I
That's
feel
what's
like a
hard.
lot of even John Dehlin, people give John Dehlin so much crap, but you'll hear him constantly say, "The Mormon Church has done a lot of good for me, or has done a lot of good for people."
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've ever on my channel have only ever said the church was bad. Um,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things like if you can, it's possible to have the good and be told the truth.
Yeah. And that's what's so confusing about it. But that's also what's characteristic of an abusive relationship. Because one of the most confusing things for someone who's been in an abusive relationship has to figure out is how could someone who loved me also hurt me? And it might be true that 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 person might have also loved you and they hurt you. And so how confusing to pair that. So it's with the church, it feels like that sometimes. Of like, it gave me so much good. There's so much good that I like about it. And what's hard to unravel too is how much honesty is emphasized in Mormonism. And you're taught from such a young age to be honest in all your dealings with everyone. Like you are supposed to be truthful in everything. And so to be taught that you're supposed to be truthful while at the same time being taught lies and being taught lies over and over and lies that they even know are lies. Sometimes there's lies that people don't know are lies, but then there's lies that they also know are lies, and those ones get. So throw that all into the mix and then have somebody churn out at the end of this. There is just going to be that betrayal trauma that impacts the way you move forward forever with faith. The way that so you might be forever so skeptical of everything, and it might have more to do with betrayal trauma than it has to do with actually what is or isn't possible with faith. But I do think that that's something that's very real.
Yeah, I think that's probably majority of it. I also think there's you were saying from the very beginning that you weren't really that interested in like the exact truth claims of the Mormon Church. And my read is that that translates over. So like if you are interested in the truth claims of the Mormon Church and then you get betrayed, now you go to the next place and you're thinking the same way about the truth claims. Where for you, you weren't really interested in the truth claims as that wasn't like the thing keeping you in the Mormon Church.
Hmm.
So then if you go to another place, you're like, this place has awesome community. It doesn't have the baggage, and the truth claims are beyond our knowledge anyway. So it's kind of like I'll go my route, and I
Yeah,
can be
that's an
honest. I can be
interesting.
honest about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's a good observation. That's true. It's not that too that I totally discounted the truth claims. They just easily made me uncomfortable if I dove deep at all into them. So I just kind of like I was way more invested in my identity as a Mormon and the lifestyle of a Mormon. So it was like it was who I was. So that's what it was. It was giving up who I was. So once I pulled apart and realized Mormonism isn't who I am who I am. Mormonism is a belief system.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was able to do that because I had seen that so as one. That
And
was
you, and yeah, and so you, in other words, you were able to go to another worship service and be who you are
yes.
and have the worship service.
Yes. And not give it up. I'm not anymore
It's not a trade-off or
intertwining
anything like
myself and my identity into it anymore. Like which also keeps you on the outside, because there's definite Christians that the way they talk, the way they think in so many ways feels parallel to what Mormons are like to me. I'm like the language and the way that they conduct themselves, it's so fused into their identity that it's funny too because I've had Christians kind of look at me with pity, like, "Oh, how sad being Mormon and this and that." But I kind of
that.
look at them with the same like, "You're more alike than you think, actually."
Yeah.
The way that I hear you conceptualize your beliefs and kind of what it means to be a follower of Jesus and the language that I hear you use around it, you're much more like
And
it than
I almost wonder if that's also another reason a lot of Mormons will maybe start going to some Christian services and have that feeling and be like, "I'm in the same place
yeah.
as I was.
And
I'm
I've,
out of here."
I've had those experiences. We've left certain churches like that when certain people have said things that I'm like, oh, even certain sermons have been preached. We left in the middle of one sermon once. I was just like, nope, this is not it. Not the place for us. Let's go. It was just as kooky as anything else. And it was a pretty mainstream church too. But I was like, nope, we're not doing this. And I've taught my kids too, hopefully, that your journey with this is your own. Like we participate as a family. This is what I think. This is what I love. But I am not all knowing. I am not God. I don't know this. Like, so I want you to have community. I'd be thrilled if you feel like life has meaning and purpose and you feel connected. But I believe more strongly in a God that loves you more than I love you, even that I'm okay trusting this. And it doesn't mean I'm like some laissez-faire parent with no standards or anything. I just don't have the fear anymore. I don't have the fear that I've recognized as such a part of Mormon parenting. This fear of like, I just got to keep them holding fast to the iron rod, and don't let go of the iron rod. And I'm kind of
I
like,
mean, the fear that dad had, and that's why he grounded his 13-year-old for 2 years from
mm-hmm,
going to dances.
mm-hmm,
It was all like, if she gets off the straight and narrow, like, first of all, his butt is on the line, and then
yeah.
also the eternities are on the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for
So
dad, it was a bit more practical. It was like, she's going
I
to
was
get
gonna say
pregnant.
dad's not that theological, but
Yeah, he was more like, you're not getting pregnant, but once you're 18 and of age, you can get married and it's fine.
and as pregnant as you ever want to be.
And yeah, and be
Well,
pregnant
not as much as you want to be. Yeah.
as many times as you possibly can, and because that's good for you. So yeah.
Um. Okay, so we talked about Mormonism. We talked about kind of where you are now with your faith. I am curious to get a little bit of your pushback on atheism
Okay.
and where you think. And it doesn't need to necessarily be. You can take it wherever you want, but it doesn't need to be like a theological discussion about like what's more likely. I'm thinking almost more like what are atheists. What are they missing, or is there that lack of community, or do you see a problem with atheism in if you even look at them as like a community? Because I know we've had conversations before, and obviously I think you have
Yeah.
some feelings about this.
Yeah, I think that so like Sam Harris is a thinker in the atheist world is someone I've always respected and enjoyed. He's such a brilliant mind. Um, I just think that you're going to face the same problem that every community faces which is we have to congregate around meaning. We have to live in relationship to each other, and we do that best when we have shared symbols and shared meaning. So we have to figure out what that is. And if there is no meaning, that's your problem, first of all. Like you got to create
So
one.
what
And
about something
you
like
will create one. One meaning will just keep showing up for people.
but
So
what if someone says, "I have meaning, I'm an American, the American flag I love the national anthem, I'm proud of my country's history, and the meaning that I have is in my family and in, trying to improve myself in whatever way."
yeah, great. I would say that when you start to live out that and form community around that, you're going to be operating in the same way as a religious community on some level. You'll start to see those same features show up. So you get together with other fellow minded patriots, other people who like America. You start to hate the people who hate America. You start to really like say, let's get together and show up to that protest with our flags when those other people are out there and let's do that. Right.
So,
And let's
yeah,
sing songs about America and
but
let's
to me,
share
that
country music about America. And then before you know it, it's sort of the same thing a religious community does. I don't think that's a bad thing either. I just think it's not that much. I think when I said everyone is religious, I'm very I agree with sort of like along the lines of what Jonathan Haidt teaches about the religious mind. I think we have religious minds in that we seek meaning and we develop through social networks around our shared symbols and these shared meanings, and that essentially we're all like little tribal people. We're just tribal and that's how we are. And so to be
so
aware of
that's
that's helpful.
so here's I'm very big. You know this. The internet knows this. I'm very big about the definition discussion, especially around the word religion. So my question is, why not just use the word tribal? You're using religion because it's like, to me, it's always this attempt. This is the attempt. This is the religious, uh, the redefinition of religion. It's an attempt to make the weird thing just like the other things. But I'm like, no, it's actually the weird thing. Like we have words to describe what you're talking about. If you want to talk about tribalism, we can talk about tribalism. If you want to talk about dogmatism, we'll talk about dogmatism. But one of these is not like the other. The one that makes claims about the supernatural is the religious one.
Okay, that's fair, that there's still category distinctions. So in the same way of like a violin and a piano are both instruments, but all instruments are not pianos, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it's
but
like
it's almost more like,
so a tribe and a religion, right, are both forms of social groups that
yeah.
coalesce around meaning and symbols, but they're not the same. They're not in the same. It doesn't not make them the
Yeah,
same.
but all of your examples, so your examples are, oh, patriotism functions like a religion. I said, no, it functions like a tribe. You're getting the
Okay,
categories
so
mixed up.
you're saying a religion is a specific form of tribalism,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I'd say
Just like
religions tend to be tribalistic, yeah,
patriotism is a form of tribalism.
but it's not a form
Religion,
of religion.
it's the tribe for you that's the category. Tribalism, religion's a type of tribalism. Patriotism's a form of tribalism, but it's all at the end of the day us being tribal.
Yeah,
And
but
I
what
care
I
enough.
would say is kind of like your orientation point. My orientation is that I would almost just rather use the word my belief that I can't change unless someone gets me to change it in whatever way that is. But my belief is that God doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And so, in order for me to not be the liar at church or be dishonest to myself, this is the category I fit in
Yeah,
regardless of my choosing.
yeah, I believe that.
So I totally agree that this group falls prey to tribalism and dogmatism. But is there anything more significant about this position that or more negative about this group? And I'm kind of almost like baiting conversations we've had before. Do you
Mhm.
believe in kind of the general narrative of if you are if you don't have these beliefs, kind of the Peter Hitchens thing I brought up, like, am I missing something fundamental that is going to be filled dangerously by something else? And I said
I,
me, but I
yeah.
mean atheism generally.
Um, I think it's going to be filled with its own stories and its own meanings, just like religion is filled with those things, right? Um, And so it's just time will tell what it is. And without, I do think what religion has versus atheism, that transcendence that sort of serves as the overarching authority of everything is the transcendent, right? That without that, um, it's always going to be humans figuring out things in lifetime with other humans and kind of changing it as they go. And nobody ultimately has anything to appeal to above each other, which that can be a good thing in that sense of it's very egalitarian, or what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't feel hierarchical in that way.
Yeah,
But
you got it.
I think the transcendent motivates people in a way to build higher, build bigger, because they're reaching for something. I don't know that there's that same reaching in atheism because it doesn't exist.
But
That,
I think the hard part is, well, I would say that there is reaching. It's all just self-made, which to me sounds a lot like your form of religious belief, where like you're not actually buying into the story of the group. You're buying into the story that you believe, and if the group doesn't match it, then you're fine going to the next church.
yeah, but I do believe in the reality of the transcendent, if that makes sense. And I'm not going to pretend that my stories about God are the accurate stories. Again, everything for me is rooted in what I think is the most logical truth, that this is beyond my scope of competence. So, I have to begin with that humility. I don't know, but I do know that I am oriented in this way. And for me to deny that would feel like just denying myself. And I believe you when you say that your orientation is not that way. So I would agree with you that unless that fundamentally feels like it changes or shifts for you, it your community that you feel like you want to build meaning with in that way on this specific topic is going to be atheists. And I'm like, that's great. There are amazing, brilliant atheists. I'm sad that there's not, obviously, we should all be building deep relationships with each other and learning from each other. So I don't even like the false dichotomy of atheist versus theist. I think that even inside of all of us, there might be a little bit of a blend of both sometimes, depending on where we're at in life.
Well, I definitely depending on how you're defining theism there, but like I actually think Sam Harris gets kind of thrown under the bus a lot. He's actually like one of the more spiritual of the atheists, like influencers.
Yeah.
That like everyone always brings him up as like the hard atheist, but really like Dawkins is probably much more of like an aggressive black and white atheist. Sam's all about the spiritual.
And I think Sam is very proactive in building, like, we've got to build something here.
Yeah, he's like making
I don't think
podcasts, he's
he's like,
making groups, and he goes on
yes,
events all the time.
100%. And
And I feel bad for him. I'm like, he always
like,
gives this bad rap, and like honestly, I disagree with him on how spiritual it is. I'm like, bro, you're sounding way too spiritual. I'm not about that. And but he says, until I did mushrooms, I would have not believed this. I'm like, well, maybe that's where I'm at. Like,
have you listened to he did like a brief podcast narrating his psychedelic trip, and it was one of the best. I just thought, if anyone, I've never done psychedelics, but I'm open to that someday in the future after I've raised my kids. And I'm sure it's not going to, I'm still too afraid that we have some mental history disorder in our family history that will flip the switch for me forever.
yeah,
But his description of his psychedelic experience was so funny and good. And I thought, if anyone is going to figure out words to summarize experiences like that, it'll be
yeah.
Sam Harris. He gave it his best shot. I still think it's totally inadequate to what the experience probably was for him, but it was a really, really good.
I've never heard anyone with a better vocabulary than Sam Harris.
It's amazing. It's a
He has
Sam.
an amazing. I'm like every time, I'm like, dude, I have no idea what half these words are.
I always feel like I come out with 3 new words that I'm like, I want to use that one next
Yeah, yeah.
time. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Well, this
I
wasn't nearly as combative as I pictured it being for
I
us.
had I had told you that it wasn't going to be combative. But the
Uh,
problem is if it's not combative, well, I don't know. It ends up feeling a little bit Mormon stories ish. Um,
But
But
you're
it's
looking to get a little more sparring?
what was it? Am I looking to get more sparring?
Well, you want a little bit more sparring back and forth?
I don't know. It's
That's
almost
for
like
Jacob. I'm kind of retiring the sparring method. I've done that with our brothers with the texts that we work on all the time. Sometimes I bow out because I just
yeah, and honestly, like
I'm in a different place right now.
after I've done a couple of these, yeah, the value isn't there for like the debate because people honestly, there's a lot of debate going on. Like I think the value is much more like we're a family of many that are all or like me and Jacob are both on YouTube and kind of like this dichotomy. And it's interesting for people to see like a very active, believing, proselytizing Mormon
Hmm.
and an angry ex-Mormon, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's all these siblings that have these thoughts in between,
Hmm.
um, and
I
some
would
more.
describe you as a very angry ex-Mormon. Is that what you're
I
describing?
describe myself to that as just kind of a joke.
Okay.
If you're Mormon, then all the ex-Mormons are angry ex-Mormons, and sometimes I come off a little bit angry. My videos, I scowl a little bit too much, and I even today I was scowling too much, but Um, anyways, we'll wrap this up. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, same. All right. Talk to you soon.